today's meeting in a virtual setting using Zoom. Planning commissioners and staff are participating from remote locations, practicing appropriate social distancing. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting by use of Zoom as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak to the Planning Commission may do so during public comment or may comment on agenda items during the discussion of each item and must be logged into Zoom. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Please do not abuse this way of providing public comment. So with that, I will open the meeting of August 9th, 2022, and call the roll. Carrie,
thank you, Kathy. Kate, is the chart under? Yeah, I'll do that. Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner Burns?
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Fernandez?
Here.
Chair Ottinger?
Here.
And Commissioner Fritz is absent. He is excused for tonight's meeting.
And now it's time for comments from the public on items not on the agenda. Is anyone here wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda? Please raise your hand virtually or actually.
I suspect everyone is here for the items tonight. I do not see anyone, and we have not received any general comments for items not on the agenda for tonight.
Thank you. Are there any statements of conflict of interest from the commission members? Seeing none, we'll move on to the first public hearing, which is the CRV, temporary use permit, regarding the recycling center at Community Church. Planner Jay, I believe you were going to speak on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair Unger. So tonight, for the first item, the applicant is seeking approval of a temporary use permit, which would extend the recycling center that is currently in operation at 1000 Gravenstein Highway North until June 30th of 2024. The recycling center is currently taking place within a vacant parking lot across the street from Sebastopol Community Church. This application was approved for a 6-month duration by the planning director on February 28th and would expire this month, the 28th, if the extension by the planning commission is not approved. The project proposes to use a 160 square foot recycling container to promote local recycling of beverage containers such as glass, aluminum, plastic, in exchange for payment. The operation is open Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. The project has been conditioned to not allow loitering on site, and transactions are account-based, so no on-site cash is being handled. The container, as conditioned, is located at least 25 feet from adjoining interior property lines. I will note that staff has received contact from neighbors in regards to the project, mostly complaints for noise, but the applicant has been very accommodating in trying to minimize those noise to the best of their ability. As of writing the staff report, the planning department has not received any additional public comments.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have questions of staff at this time? I'm not seeing any, so would the applicant like to present? I'm not sure whether that would be Barbara.
Yes, I believe the applicant will be Dennis Blong, and I believe Barbara from the community church might have some additional comments to add in.
Okay, then Mr. Blong, would you like to speak at this time?
I would, and I'd like to thank the efforts so far and convey to everyone that of the hundreds and hundreds of people that we've served, 90% of them are from the city of Sebastopol, and the general consensus is that they're extremely glad that we're operating there. Just so everyone's aware, we are working with Cal Recycle, setting up these mini recycle centers. We just opened another one in Healdsburg on the City Hall parking lot. And our mission, of course, as United Cerebral Palsy is to not only, work as far as and as diligently as we can on our environmental stewardship, but to also and principally provide good paying jobs for adults with developmental disabilities in the community. And that's really our mission. We operate in 3 counties. We have 350 full-time adults with some level of disabilities working with us every single day in Napa, Solano, and Sonoma County. And we're very proud of what we've been able to do so far. And we'd love to continue to work with the city of Sebastopol to make sure that everyone has this opportunity, which gets smaller and smaller all the time, by the way, as other recycling centers for CRD have closed over the last several years. So thank you again. And I really appreciate the city's effort to allow us to continue this operation.
And thank you, Mr. Belong, for running this operation. I think we're all really grateful that you're here. Barbara J. Hansen, did you want to add something to that? You're muted.
I know there is one neighbor who is upset. He works from home and finds the noise a problem. He's the only person who has complained to us. Our minister has spoken with him. We're happy with the project. It does not leave a mess in our parking lot. There's no broken glass. People can use the lot on Sunday. It's not a problem. So we're fine with it continuing.
Okay, then I'll bring this back to the commissioners. Would anyone like to ask questions of Everett?
Thank you. I just have one question. If someone brings in material that is not CRV, there's certain containers that aren't qualified for that. Do you provide a receptacle for them to dispose of that, or do they need to take those back with them?
It depends. If it's 1 or 2 bottles, we gladly take them and dispose of them for them. But if they bring in large volumes of non-CRV or any plastics 2 through 7 or bimetal cans that, we just can't handle at that facility, they're required to take them home with them. We have posted signs explaining how many pounds per day each individual can bring of aluminum cans, of plastic water bottles, which is PET1, and of glass bottles that are CRV. So it's been a bit of an education, training the local populace, but I can tell you at first, there was a lot of people that had 2 years worth of materials stored in their backyard or barn or whatever due to the pandemic. And we did everything we could to process even over the limit or given limits by Cal Recycle to accommodate them, or they just kept coming back, week after week until they had gotten rid of all their material. But no, we cannot take other non-CRV materials at our Petaluma facility where we process everything. We used to take cardboard, newspaper, newsprint, all sorts of items, small metal things, but we just can't handle it anymore. We are doing so much CRV in Sonoma County. We're actually looking for a new expanded facility right now with Zero Waste Sonoma to expand our infrastructure to handle more CRV, and Zero Waste Sonoma. And I don't know if you guys are on that commission, but they're looking to set up a recycling facility for household hazardous waste as well. So we're working on a lot of fronts, but there are certain things that, based on Cal Recycle's mandates, we're not allowed to take, and non-CRV is one of them. I will say, being where we are, we've had 1 million people ask, why can't you take wine bottles, But there is legislation currently going through the California Senate to start including both wine and liquor bottles and put CRV on them as well. So one of these days, I'm assuming we'll be handling those materials. I hope that answers.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Linda, I think you wanted to speak?
I did. Thank you. Is it okay to donate our recyclables that are CRV so that, just to help your cause out?
Sorry.
Because it's really important. What we are currently doing is a manual process. So when a customer shows up, we set up an account on our computer, we weigh their material and cut them a check or pay them on PayPal. Eventually, we are going to be changing the way we do business and just receiving from our customers bags of material, which will then be transported back to Petaluma to be processed. It's called a bag drop process, and it, by the way, it will eliminate the noise that the current neighbor is experiencing. So rolled into that process are some very interesting opportunities so that no one will be paid in cash or a check. It's going to be all electronic. We'll have your name, address, phone number, and your, however you want your payment done, whether it's PayPal or something else. But the company that's helping us set this up has all sorts of other options, including you can just donate whatever that money is to United Cerebral Palsy of the North Bay, or B, to a conglomerate of 10 non-for-profits in Sonoma County. C, they're setting up this other program where people can apply it to their kids' college fund or a variety of other applications. So that's all coming down the road, but it's probably 4 to 5 months away yet. It will be available though.
Yeah. Thank you. That sounds
Well,
really
thank
good. Sorry, Linda.
Yeah, I had still a couple of questions, but I'm echoing what you said, Kathy, that that was a very informative answer. Thank you very much. And that it deals with a neighbor who's been having issues. I'm wondering how the discussions to the neighbor that was, having issues, how close to the facility is that resident? And was the resident satisfied with your answers?
I guess you're addressing this to Barbara Johansson?
Well, that's
guess-
a problem because I'm not privy to all that has happened. And I think he also met with someone Dennis, did the neighbor meet with you specifically? Because I think it wasn't just meeting with our minister. And has he directly come to the planning commission yet, Kathy?
I'm not aware.
So I'll step in real quick. I have spoken to one that I'm pretty sure it's the same neighbor. He is about 2 parcels down from the site on Danmore Road, I believe is the cross street there.
Yeah.
The complaint was in regards to noise, mostly coming from the weighing, I believe, of the glass bottles and stuff like that. It was an easy conversation that I did have with him, and kind of just let him know that it's not it's not going to be a permanent thing. It is within a residential district and it requires a use permit for its operation. But he seemed to take those comments well. But other than that, as far as the in-person conversation, I believe Dennis might have spoken to him, or it could have been somebody else in that regard, as for one-on-one conversation.
And I'm sorry, Kathy,
That's fine.
do you mind if I continue?
Continue.
Have you had any problems with people just dropping off things and contributing, maybe things that shouldn't be brought to you all? You have to deal with that. Is that a big problem?
I can address that, and I'll also address the situation with the neighbor. I've had multiple emails with him. He'll if he hears the noise, he lets me know. And I've worked out a process with our workers there to try to mitigate the noise as much as possible. And I explained to him that we will be eliminating that as soon as we have this new equipment in place. So I think he is in a good spot with it. It's irritating. Believe me, it's irritating when you're pouring that glass from somebody's, box or whatever into our weighing bins. And then we put it on a scale, and then we have to put it in another bin to load it on the truck. So it does create some noise, and it's not, I wish we didn't have to take it, but it's part of the package. So that is all said and done. I think the guy's name's Benjamin. He's really a very nice guy and understanding. So I don't think we'll have much more hearing from him because of what we've done already and his confirmation that he understands. Anytime he's got any questions or problems, he immediately contacts me. So It's a good relationship, really.
And the issue around people just dropping things off, I hate to have folks just go, oh, great, that's great, we can, I'm sure you take care of it every day. But
let me address that because it's a funny situation. So apparently, and this is all what I was told, for 10 years there was a Goodwill container there. So a lot of people have the habit of going there and trying to drop off donations. The first 3 people that showed up when we opened all wanted to donate. Interestingly enough, we have a thrift store in Rohnert Park, which of course is manned by a lot of our folks with disabilities as well as staff members. So we have been accepting, some things, clothes, whatever we can. And there have been some rather unsavory people that have dropped off things like couches and junk on the side of the trailer. Not very much. But we just put it on our truck and take it back. We deal with that type of situation very easily because we've been doing it for literally 12 years, running thrift stores from Santa Cruz to Sacramento. So we do get stuff. It's not that often, and we just handle it. Nobody's dropped off anything dangerous or hazardous or anything of that nature yet.
I'd like to say the church appreciates you taking those things. Thank you.
Well, we can't leave it there. It's an eyesore, and it's not great. But we back at our Petaluma Recycling Center, we have big, large dumpster bins that we could just toss stuff into if it's real trash, which mostly it is. On the other hand, we have one bin inside the container where if people want to donate something for a thrift store and it's not, junk, we do take it and we'll take it back to our store in Rohnert Park. It's great. It's good for the community too.
thank you again for that information. One last question to the church. Are you still doing your safe parking in that parking lot?
We do safe parking in a different parking lot. It's right on the church campus near our buildings. And we have 2 huts and we have space for, I believe, 3 cars.
Okay. So it used to be over there, but then when you built the huts that you moved it off across the street. Okay.
No, the safe parking has always been right around our church, not in the open parking lot on Danmar.
Oh,
Right. That way they have access to restrooms and such. Yeah.
Right.
okay, great. Again, thank you so much for the information and for all the hard work. And so I can't say what I say about the project quite yet, but let's move on.
Thank you.
Everett? You're muted.
Yeah, thank you. I just have one other question I had thought about. So when you do your payouts, I know that unhoused individuals that come in, sometimes that's how they supplement their income. Some of the centers throughout had paid cash, which makes it easy for them. I don't know if someone that shows up doesn't have the ability to have a PayPal or other source. Has that been an issue, or how does that work?
So let's see, I'm unmuted. So first of all, we're mandated by Cal Recycle to only allow people from the state of California to use our recycling operations. So what we've done is we've set up a system where anybody that's got a state ID or a driver's license, we just scan the barcode on the back of the card and it gives us their name, address. We ask them for a phone number because the next time they come back, we only use phone numbers. So what we have done with the folks that come in that are not unhoused people, everybody has a phone. You're probably aware of that. They all have a phone and they have some sort of address that even that it's their mom's or whatever, as long as it's in California, we set them up an account. And then they come in and they get a check on Exchange Bank, which is the bank we use corporately, which is literally 200 feet down the road, there's an Exchange Bank. So I don't think it's a big problem. We haven't, I'll be honest with you, not one of them has ever asked for cash when they see the sign that says PayPal or check. It's always worked out. Now we have had some of those folks we've had to mandate that they do not bring to the parking lot shopping carts, because normally they're stolen from some retail store, some grocery store, and then they're left somewhere. And we've had that problem, everywhere, in Petaluma, et cetera. And you just have to tell everybody, we don't mind taking your material, do what you need to do, but there's no sorting of material on site, and you can't bring shopping carts. And the no sorting of material on site is due to the fact that if you allow people to come in, that's when you start getting a lot of trash on the parking lot, because they're throwing this out, they're throwing that out, the bottle caps are everywhere. So if they're unhoused, they're still easily accessible, our facility, and we know who they are. There's probably 6 or 8 of them that are every single week they're there, and they're good people. So it works.
Okay. Good. And then using PayPal, they take their cut. They take, what is it, 3%?
3%, that's correct.
So if someone brings in material, they're going to get a payment less 3%.
That's correct.
And is there any other way to mitigate that?
Well,
we're
going to set up Venmo as well, and they don't charge anything. Here's initially, and I'm talking a year ago, we were going to set up and use debit cards and issue these. You buy 50 debit cards and you load them up for whatever amount, but their rates are much, much higher. They're up, like 12% per transaction. And we didn't feel like that would be fair to the people that are there that really need the money. So we went with PayPal 3%. The checks, they're not dinged at all, but there's very few people, I'll tell you this, no offense to anyone here on this call, but I'm going to say most of our customers are in my age group. There's a lot of elderly folks in Sebastopol that use our facility, and not a lot of them either like or use or have PayPal. So we do pretty much all checks, and maybe 5% are PayPal transactions.
Okay. Great. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Are there any more questions or comments from planning commissioners? Not seeing then any, I will open the public hearing now. If anyone wishes to speak at the public hearing, please raise your virtual or your actual hand and we'll get Carrie's attention.
And if you don't know how to do either of those, you can also use the chat at the bottom of the screen.
I'm not seeing.
I'm not seeing any either.
Okay, then I will close the public comment period. Is anyone prepared to make a motion on the Planning Commission?
I'd like to make a motion for approval.
Excuse me, I'm happy to second it.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the application. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Carrie, will you do the vote?
Sure. Yeah, and just for the record, this is to approve the temporary use permit for the CRV at the community church parking lot. And this will be subject to the findings and conditions contained in the staff report, those exhibits. Commissioner Kelly.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Burns.
Yes.
Vice Chair Fernandez
Aye.
and Chair Ottinger.
Yes.
The motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent.
Thank you,
So-
Mr. Long and Ms. Johansson, for the work that you're doing on this project. I know the whole community really appreciates the effort.
Well, thank all of you. It's a worthwhile cause, believe me.
Thank you. And there is a 7-day appeal period. However, obviously you're already operating under the existing use permit, which can continue. Your approval will be final in 7 days, and it will be good through the date as noted in the application.
Thank you all.
And thank you. And Dennis, if there is a desire to extend it after that time, then you are able to ask for an amendment to the temporary use permit, should you need.
Interestingly, the date that it extends to is the exact length that the Cal Recycle grant that we're operating under. And
Yes.
Thank you. That's great that it coincides.
Great. And if you do happen to get a second grant or another grant, it would require an amendment before the Planning Commission here to extend that, but that's certainly something they can consider.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 5B, which is the Smokehouse barbecue request. I believe Associate Planner John Jay is also covering that for us.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So the proposal for the Smokehouse barbecue is to keep the live music portion of the use permit, and it will be subject to the recommended conditions of approval and those required by the city's noise ordinance. The Smokehouse barbecue has been offering live music for more than 13 years on site within its outdoor stage. However, over the last few years, the city has received an increase in noise complaints from the neighboring residents. The stage offers live music from 4:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday nights as a part of the unofficial Peace Down concert series during the summertime. Music is also played on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, from 1 to 4 and 5 to 8 p.m. As the original conditions of approval for the restaurant and alcohol use permit indicate that no live music shall emanate beyond 50 feet of the business site. Rather than lowering the music volume, the owner has decided to apply for a use permit to legalize the music event. Myself and the planning director did meet with the applicant on site on June 27th of this year to offer some solutions to help mitigate the noise as much as possible and those solutions are a part of the recommended conditions of approval. I will let Carrie add any additional background information for this project, as this permit was originally applied for before I was on staff. So any additional background information she can provide. And
Thank
we
you,
also
John.
have the applicant, Larry, to provide questions or to provide comments. Thanks.
Thank you, John. So this is an application that was submitted last year due to staffing and I will take the sole blame for this. The struggle because of the balance of in our general plan of wanting to encourage activities, but also wanting to make sure that they're not disruptive to a neighborhood. This is a project that or an application that I struggled with a bit. Once John was on board and up to speed on kind of what we were doing, he and I have been working on how to approach this. The original application did include a condition that allowed for the alcohol use permit does include a provision that allows live music. So they were operating under that. However, it does contain the provision that it basically, you can have it, but it can't be heard from 50 feet, I believe it is, beyond the site. So basically the other side of Laguna Parkway, which is a 50-foot right of way. The police department and the planning department have gotten multiple complaints over the years. And my understanding from talking with a couple of those complainants is, part of that may be coming from the type of music has changed. And so you'll see in some of John's conditions, some of the ideas about, well, if it's acoustic or, just a couple of people and not a full-fledged band, that tends to be a quieter and more likely to meet the noise ordinance. John and I did meet with Larry on site, and Kate, I don't know if she's here tonight. We looked at the setup, and certainly, although the downtown noise permit does allow for a slight exceeding of the noise ordinance, it only allows that twice a month, and this permit is being requested for 3 times a week, and so it wouldn't qualify for it. However, John and I looked at the criteria and the conditions from that, and we found some of those very useful, looking at how sound could be attenuated on site. And there's a couple of simple measures that I'm not sure, maybe Larry can, the applicant can speak to this. There were a couple that we talked about with them, one of which was just turning the amplifiers to be facing the Barlow instead of basically directed at where the residences was. And my understanding is they didn't understand that it was because of the topography in that area. It basically goes right through where the police department is and up the hill that way, kind of bypassing Johnson Street, which is the sort of immediate neighbor to it. Although I believe John did note that we received a comment from someone on Flynn Street who had some complaints as well, so behind it. So, there may have been a change in music or whatnot over time. But I do think this is coming to the Planning Commission because there have been disruptions within the neighborhood to what I would say is seems like a significant level in terms of frequency and quantity. And so it's clearly not meeting that original condition of approval of not being able to be heard 50 feet off site. And I'm happy to answer any other kind of background questions on this one as well.
I'd like to start off with one question regarding page 57 of the report. It lists a number of solutions and comments, but I don't know who the author of that document is. That's 57 of the revised report.
Hold on.
It was suggestions for acceptable levels of music sounds.
So
Yeah.
those actually came from someone, a member of the public, and I think they actually were after I had discussions with them, and they expressed to me that they weren't necessarily opposed to some of the music, but it was like really loud bands, the electric guitars, the horns, the the drum kit kind of stuff that was just way too loud and really disruptive. And I think, John and I reviewed those. I don't know if we included all of those in, but some of them seemed very helpful, at least just as a discussion point for the commission to start their discussions.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Are there other commissioners with questions of staff at this time?
Where am I?
You're next after questions of staff. I don't.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Oh,
can.
good, because I didn't know if you could. I haven't done a Zoom meeting on my own ever.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty scary.
Can you see me?
I see that Linda Kelly has raised her hand, so we'll have Linda ask her questions of staff, and then at that time, we'll let Larry Vito have the floor and to discuss his concerns. Linda? Linda, are you there? You're muted.
Okay, thank you. I somehow hit the button to raise my hand, which is not a bad thing to do, but that's not how I usually get in. I'm concerned a little bit about how the stage was. Did it need permits? I'm worried about, safety, trip hazards, all that good stuff. So if staff has any information on that, and then I can have maybe the applicant address that in a bit.
Yeah, Linda. So the building department did go out and review the stage and its ADA compliancy and found that there was no negative issues or concerns with the stage itself, and didn't feel that any additional provisions in that regard would have needed to be added to this permit.
Okay, and for staff, I know there was a suggestion maybe of using straw bales to attenuate the noise level and stuff. Are there safety issues with using that? Combustibility? Yeah, I know they're used for sound around generators out in the country a lot, but we're in town, and I just wanted to address it.
I hope not, or we're gonna have to go talk to those Gravenstein Apple Fair folks, huh? No, I think in the open, we can check with the building official, but I think in the open air nature of this, and would be far enough from the building that I don't think there'd be a concern with that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Burns, do you have questions at this time?
I do. For some reason, my hand wasn't raising, but now it is.
Oh,
So thank you so much. Carrie, I was just curious. I'm not sure if I misunderstood, but in reading through, the original permit was for how many days a week for the music?
It was not specified. It was just that it could not be heard. It need the sound of the limit of where you could hear it was 50 feet away. So the other side of Laguna Parkway.
I couldn't find like how many days a week. So it could be 7, it could be. And do we know how many days a week they currently have music? And I'd also read the hours were between 4:30 and 7:30. Is that accurate?
So the hours within the staff report, 4:30 and 7:30 are on Wednesday nights, they're unofficially a part of the Peacetown concert series. And then the other 2 nights a week are Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 5, and then from 5 to 8, I believe it was. So those would be the 3 nights per week that they're offering live music in the summertime. When we did speak to Larry out there, he did mention that in the wintertime, it's a little bit harder for them to do live music with the weather and stuff like that. So the summertime is typically when they're most busy with outdoor live music.
And then just one last question, looking for solutions for both the residents who are, affected by the music and the business owner who would like to provide music. in a use permit, can we make provision for hours? I did see decimals in the staff report, but hours, decimals I saw, yes. And also how many days per week?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. That was it. Thank you so much.
Chairman Fernandez?
Yes, so would the Wednesday night, the Peace Town, that falls under kind of a separate arrangement, would that allowable music fall under the Peace Town kind of approval rules? And then the rest of the days, would it go under this permit?
So I'll attempt to answer this one, then Carrie can correct me if I'm wrong. But so they would be subject to their own rules and regulations. So whatever conditions that were set for this project, because they're not an official part of the Peacetown concert series, they would not be subject to the same rules and noise level allowances that the Peacetown series is, unless you were to condition the project in such a way, I think.
Right, and I can, that is correct. So then the reason John was calling it an unofficial part of Peacetown is because they were not part of the Peacetown application. However, the Peacetown application is subject to the noise ordinance, so that's. And yeah.
Good. And then the music on Sundays from the farmers market, how is that permitted as well?
I don't believe that those are, I don't believe, there is no permits for that. That's just a free use of a city park that's happening.
Okay.
So I know there's certainly people who meet there on a regular basis and do that, but they do not have any city permits for that. That would require a special event permit, like the farmers market had, or a use permit of some sort, like the farmers market itself has. So that is not permitted, and yes, I am aware that is somewhat loud, and I know our police department does also get calls from that venue quite a bit.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's all the questions I had for now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Linda, you still have your hand up. Were you interested in asking another question? Linda?
I don't know how to get.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
how to take the hand down. Is there a
Oh,
button
I
to
can do
press?
it for you, Linda.
Okay.
There you
Okay.
go.
But I
Okay.
do have one question to follow Vice Chair Fernandez, and that is, so this application is for Wednesdays and the weekend, but it sort of is being offered that it's a piggyback onto the Wednesday nights, but it sounds like it doesn't stop the performances on Wednesday nights unless the weather starts getting bad. Is that true?
So it is not part of the Peacetown concert series. It's just something that they offer for their patrons as additional live music on top of what the Barlow has with the Peacetown concert series.
Right,
Okay.
and so Commissioner Kelly, I think another way of stating that is if you wanted to permit it to be the Wednesdays to be consistent with the Peacetown concerts, then yes, you would need to clarify that for the conditions, because right now the request is for any Wednesday, any and all Wednesdays. There's no limit to for the application request. It's simply Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, as John described.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you.
Do I see other questions of staff at this time? Then I'll turn it over to the applicant, Mr. Vito.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I
Oh,
can.
great. That's good. Can you see me?
No.
I for a moment I had to turn on, but I don't know how to turn it on. Anyway, I've been trying, but I just can't find the right button here. Ask to start your video. Okay.
Hmm.
Wow, there I am.
Hi.
That's it. Hi. So, little history. We've been here since 2000 in Sebastopol. We started the company in 1996. We opened the restaurant in 2009, and at some point we decided we opened this garden area, and then we decided it'd be a good idea to have music, and it was very well received, and nobody really seemed to notice, and we didn't know we needed a permit until we started to get, I think when COVID ended, when we could have outdoor seating, we started to bring in some larger bands to attract people, and it worked quite well. And it's enabled us to increase our revenue dramatically on the days that we have music. When, a lot of times when we don't have music, we don't have anybody here. The Barlow can be rocking and, they're all over there. We used, the Barlow has drawn off a lot of business, and in an opportunity to regain that market share, we started to have bigger bands, and actually when people can hear the music, they come over. So it's kind of it lures them over. Otherwise, they don't notice us. We used to do a lot of business with the movie theater, but then the movie theater got its own food, and that all went away. And we're really struggling here. We have 8 or 9 employees. Many of them have been here for more than 5 years. We didn't lay off anyone during COVID. We just sucked it up and paid everybody, and just kind of ran down the bank account. Actually, we went negative with our bank account, and we carried our staff. And in the winter, we don't really make money. We might break even. Many months we lose money, and our opportunity to make money is in the summer. And music has now become an essential part of that. And if we don't get a music permit, we will close. That's a fact. So the kind of music, the louder music is what works. That's what brings in business. So we've cut back on the louder bands. We haven't really had any lately, and that's hurt our business. Also, we can't pay them very much. And now that COVID is ending, the bigger bands are going places where they can be paid well. So we do have louder music on Peacetown nights. We need to have louder music because Peacetown is so loud that they overplay our music. And I don't begrudge them that. I mean, I love Peacetown. I love what Jim does over there. I like, everybody loves it. Well, except a couple of neighbors. But, I mean, I don't know what to say. I really don't. We haven't had very many large bands on weekends. We don't have any scheduled on weekends. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, we have Doc Kraft and their rock and roll band. But I mean, does it really matter if our music is able to be heard more than 50 feet outside of the gate when Peacetown is blasting away in 5 different stages? Does it? I've asked that question. No one's answered that ever. Could somebody please answer that? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Oh, good.
we can hear you, but our process for answering questions is when you're completed.
Okay. In a way, it's rhetorical because it's kind of silly. Also on weekends, there's the drum circle and the music in the park, and they're very loud. And we can hear them distinctly and loudly and clearly right here. And yet they're allowed to continue, but we can't. When we first got our complaints, Kate and I went door to door, and we thought it was Johnson Street because an officer told us that. We went door to door, every house within, I think, 450 feet of the restaurant, and everyone who answered the door signed our petition to continue the music, and they made a lot of nice comments. They do like the music. We weren't aware that the people complaining were on Taft Street. I have been up on Taft Street numerous times in the last couple of weeks with I have a sound meter, professional level sound meter, and I measure the sound. And up there on Taft Street last Sunday, we had one guy playing, and I thought he was too loud for the garden, just for people to be eating. There's one musician. I went up to Taft Street. I could barely hear him. I could hear the drum circle much louder, and on my decibel meter, I had 57. So, I don't, the music that the sound levels that I record up there are not, they're, like 65, 68, 70, even when we have a good sized band. When I go down to Peastown, I get 93, 94. If I'm in the parking lot, sometimes it rises up to 100 dB. With my sound meter, if I stand on the street, a car driving, and I'm on the sidewalk on Laguna Parkway, a car driving by is 65 decibels. So I think that the sound threshold is ambitiously low, not unrealistic, that only 65 dB is allowable. I mean, if the cars are 65, and I know you don't want to disturb the neighbors, but all the neighbors on Johnson Street like it. Seems like I read 9 compelling letters about why we shouldn't have music from Taft Street, and seems like everybody up there doesn't like it, and nobody here, and everyone else likes it. We got 600 signatures from our patrons, and I don't know what to say, but we will close if we don't get a permit, because it makes no financial sense to remain open. And that'll be after 20 years. 9 people lose their jobs. I will lose my income, and I put all my money back into the restaurant. So we're doing our best over here and hanging on by our fingernails.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's why we're here. We're all trying to figure out what to do and how to make it work. If you've completed your comments, I think we have an opportunity for the planning commissioners to ask questions of you before we
Sure.
public hearing. Would
Sure.
anyone like to jump in right now, or Everett? Commissioner Fernandez?
Thank you. First of all, I'd see if we can answer Mr. Vito's question that he asked. If anybody from staff could
Was that the
address
question
that.
about the level of noise at the Peastown?
Right.
Okay, so the response I don't know that the police department has gotten any complaints about that. I have not been out there. We don't go out and proactively measure. We do that when there is a complaint. We have not gotten complaints. I did talk to Jim Cormett as we were going through the Peastown permitting process. And obviously it's in the conditions of approval, so they should be aware of the noise limit. If they don't have professional sound engineers, that's certainly something we can communicate to them. But I do recall actually Larry asking me that question, and after that I did communicate with Jim, the applicant, for the Peastown, the organizer for the Peastown events. If he is not abiding by that, then again, we don't do code enforcement based on proactive, because we don't have a code enforcement officer in the city. The police does regularly respond to noise complaints, and we address those. I am doing one for another business right now, so this is in no way an unfair treatment of Mr. Zito. This is, we have regulations and we're doing our best to implement them. And now that I understand that they're still above their noise limits, I will talk to Jim again about
Well,
that.
I'm not ratting out Jim. I think his music is appropriately at an appropriate sound level for a concert. I think it's great. I like the music down there.
Okay.
Another question?
Yes. Yeah. So, Mr. Vito, you had met with the staff, planning director and associate planner, and you guys talked about some suggestions or ideas to maybe, mitigate some of the sound, turn the stage or the speakers. And I'm just wanting to get your input on some of those suggestions, and if you are able to, or to implement those, and how you feel about those.
Well, it's fine with me. I think for the most part they do turn their amps towards I guess south. And I don't know if there have been complaints lately about the music. I just don't know if that's helping or not. But we haven't had a large band here in over a month. We had Bitter Blues here a while back, and but most of the time it's just one or two people, and we have, our musicians are, for the most part, they're senior citizens or close to it, and we also have people who really wouldn't get paid or wouldn't be able to perform anywhere else because they're not that interesting or that good. We have, and it's all local artists, local musicians, and their friends come out to hear them. It's really nice.
Yeah.
I've sent numerous videos to Carrie. But in answer to your question, I don't know. Are people still complaining? Because since our meeting, the bands, which we've had maybe one or two, have pointed their music that way. When we have one or two performers, they don't turn their amp. But I don't know if that's bothering anybody.
I guess, like, for example, turning the amplifiers more towards the Barlow, that type of thing.
Right.
That's just, my question, encouragement, any other ideas that kind of come up, to try to, allow you to continue to do your music and, minimize the noise. I mean, it's, you're not going to eliminate it. And, it's part of living downtown, I think, for a lot of people. I can hear the football games from my house, but, that's part of living in the city and its activity and so forth. So, but that was just my question and encouragement that, hey, if you see any opportunities to do that, I would encourage you to
Absolutely.
think about that.
And it's, the larger bands are plenty loud for the people sitting here. And I mean, it's only, I think it's 40 feet from the stage to the other side of our outdoor seating area.
Okay. All right. That's all questions I have for now. Thank you.
Okay. I'll call on Commissioner Burns. Do you have questions at this time of the applicant?
I think Everett was on the same path that I was, where I would love to see if we could come to some type of win-win, as best as we can, compromise. So, the turning of the speakers, the hay bales, I guess, my question for you is, what are some of the mitigation issues that you can think of that, won't put you out of business, but will help with some of the sound, whether it be, making sure that the amplification is at a certain level, making sure the bands are turning, the amps, limiting the hours so it's not going till 8 o'clock at night. Like, what are some of the things you can do that you think would make a difference? Because it sounded like some of the bands are are doing it. Some of the bands are not. You don't know if it's making a difference, but what would you be willing to kind of make sure is happening to help try to mitigate?
Well, I don't, when it's one or two people, I don't think it's necessary. They're not playing rock and roll. Actually, we did have a pretty loud rock and roll duo, but Tucker died a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, they were great. But most of the artists are, they don't make that much noise, in my opinion. And I don't know if anyone is complaining lately about them. So, and some of the musicians here are really great, and others are pretty terrible. They're just not very good. But we have some really wonderful, some couples. And I don't think it's very loud. The bands, I agree. When we have a rock and roll band like Doc Rapp, they are noisy, and we ask them to turn their speakers that way. And I don't know if that's bothering people on Taft Street or not.
Could you reduce the amount of, could you reduce the sound?
We do, they like to play loud, and we tell them turn it down. And then it seems like I don't know, it seems to get louder. And then we say, please turn it down or you're gonna have to leave. And they'll turn it down grumpily. And they'll also say, why should we? When Peacetown is playing right over top of us. It's really, I get pretty incredulous looks from these guys when I'm asking them to turn down the music, and it's loud elsewhere in town.
I totally.
They don't get it.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you're in an awkward position, and I hear you. I guess for me, maybe if there's some way that they can understand, this is what we need to do, or it's not.
Well, we do tell them, and we, when you have, we don't have anybody scheduled on weekends that's, a larger band that's probably not going to offend anybody.
Gotcha.
It's mostly on Peacetown night, and and that helps us a lot when people turn out for Peacetown and they come and they sit here. Our sales quadruple. It's Tuesday night, and as you can see, there's nobody in this seating area. We've done, I don't know, maybe like a couple of to-goes tonight, and
is that your?
There's a couple with a kid in a baby carriage over there. That's it.
Well, thank you so much for thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay.
You're welcome. And I want to add, I think difficult is being on the planning board, because you've got the public in one ear and then you've got business owners in the other, and it's like, must be hard.
Yes, definitely is.
Yeah. And I'm a business owner and a planning committee. I hear it is hard, but so thank you.
Commissioner Kelly, do you have something to ask at this time?
Yes, Mr. Vito. When you were asked if you went along with any of the recommended conditions of approval or how you felt about it, city staff has put together Exhibit B, and it didn't sound like that's what we are talking about, because it's saying only acoustic music, no amplification, and I'm pretty sure that you're not going along with it, but it's not real clear. Which parts aren't you going along with? And
every single musician that shows up here has an amp. They're playing outdoors, and it's, they're plugged in and they're amplified so people can hear them. There's different, so they're all amplified. They might be playing acoustic instruments that are plugged into an amplifier. There's a difference between electric guitar and an acoustic guitar. But I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. But they all have amplifiers. Every one of them.
All right, I understand what you're doing and what you've done, but what I was asking about, that means that you are not willing to accept the conditions of approval that were on Exhibit B.
I'm not familiar with Exhibit B. I'd have to.
I'm not sure if you can see this on your
Oh, I
screen.
can't. No, that's not going to work for us. I mean, these drums, horns, or accordions. 2 singers innocent, limit days an hour, 3 days a week. You know, we have a guy who shows up here randomly often on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, nights, all by himself, and just sits over there on the stage and plays softly. You know, musicians just show up and play here. But they don't play loud enough to bother anybody. No drums, horns, or accordions. Most, you know, any band of, 4 or 5 people is probably going to have drums. Horns, we had a jazz group here last week. They have a horn. I mean, that's really going to limit. I mean, the band's, somebody wants to play here. Oh, you have a horn? Sorry, you can't play here. Or accordions. I don't know what's wrong with an accordion. Are they loud? Or did the people on task not like accordions? I don't know. We are trying to not have large bands on weekends, and we are asking the larger bands to turn their amplifiers towards the Barlow. But limiting, I mean, if we have a band, they're going to have drums, and sometimes they have horns. And, Sebastopol is growing, and a lot of people don't like it. There's good and bad things that came with the Barlow. And it's hurting some people, including us, and we're trying to make the best of it. If you can't beat them, join them.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry to probably not make you happy.
No, this is good. It's important for us to hear your situation, and we do understand it. And I'm very confused as to how to proceed here, but I have some questions myself. You're saying that musicians show up and they all have amplification. So
Yeah.
condition A is not going to work for you. And they have drums, horns, and not usually accordions, but so that's not going to work for you.
Well, on the 3rd, we always have we have a nice relationship with the street band, the Hubbub Club, and they have lots of horns. But that's, I hope, a special night because there's fireworks going on. I hope nobody minds that.
Yeah, and then 1 or 2 singers. You've already mentioned the groups are of all different sizes. Reasonable methods of attenuating the noise. Do you have any plans to do things that will deflect the noise or absorb it? Do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, I have. I've thought about it a lot, and I don't know. I mean, there's a band on this side of this stage of the dining area, and they're, that's not our property over on the other side to move the stage. They're facing that way, and
that way being where?
I'd like to know: have there been complaints lately about about the music we have. And, I invite anybody to come down here anytime on any Wednesday or weekend night. And it's pretty magical. These groups and the families and the kids and the, people dancing, and just, it's really laid back. It's not, we're not Jaspers at 3 a.m.
So I guess going back to my question, we have an item D that's suggesting that you employ reasonable measures, but I don't hear specifically, have you turned your speakers away from the hillside back? You're pointing over there, but I can't tell what direction that is.
I'm sorry. So if you think of the Barlow, what is it, McKinley Street, that is south of us. And so the one time lately that we've had a larger band, we asked them to turn the speakers towards south, towards McKinley Street. And I don't know if people are still complaining or not.
Okay.
Or, and in a way, it's kind of like, I'm sure the people on Taft Street are fed up. So if they hear a pin drop over here, they might be on the phone with the police department. I don't know.
So that is something that you have done. You have turned the speakers away.
Yeah.
And you have asked people to turn the speakers down. Have you?
And we don't have as many, we haven't had any big bands on weekends for quite some time, several months.
Okay. And have you considered some other noise barriers, such as the straw bales along the parkway side of the venue?
Well, I don't think the people, I don't know if the people over on Johnson Street and in that area are offended by the music. I mean, if they were, yeah, we could put up hay bales over there, but it seems like the problem is towards the police station.
Mm-hmm.
And the people working at the police station, they told me they like to come outside and sit on the lawn and eat their lunch because they like the music. You can't please all the people all the time. And nobody knows it better than the Planning Commission.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just looking at some of the other issues here that I'm stuck because we've got some conditions of approval and clearly they don't sit well with you. So that's really difficult for us.
It's not me, it's the bands and it's the people who come here. I don't know how I'm gonna, I've got people who've played here for years and one of them plays a trumpet. He doesn't blast it. I mean, you should come down here and listen to the level of music and just see what's going on here. I don't know, to really understand how inoffensive it is, 95% of the time.
Okay. I see Deborah Burns has her hand up.
Thank you. So I am struggling a teeny bit here as well. On one hand, my heart goes out to you hearing that if you can't have the music, you'll have to close. And I know the difficult time businesses have gone through during the pandemic. And on the other hand, I'm struggling with if it's an option between closing your business or working with us on some of these issues. I just would like to reach in and ask you to work with us. And I hear you that it's not you, it's the band and your patrons. But I feel that, that's part of the job is to be, the leader, the boss of this situation and say, hey guys, these are the mitigation issues I need to do. It's an all or nothing kind of a situation. So while the volume might not be as loud and we might have to go to 7:30 instead of 8, we might have to turn the speakers. Like, I think some of these things are very reasonable.
7:30 isn't, isn't a problem.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm out of turn.
No, that's a problem. I did want to say in your defense, and I wanted to I just wanted to kind of bring this up, that there is a big difference. Amplified music, I think, is becoming a buzzword here. And, it is true that there is a difference between an acoustic guitar that is amplified
Right.
to a lower decimal than an electric guitar that is amplified. So, then a folk singer that's amplified to a whole rock band with, horns and, so I think, the acoustic is tripping people up. And, if we could focus more on decimals and duration and, because if there's someone sitting there playing their acoustic guitar, even if it's amplified, I can't imagine that is what is bothering the neighbors. I mean, obviously we'll hear from the neighbors, but so this acoustic is kind of throwing, or amplification is kind of throwing
Sure.
things when, so yeah, there you go.
Thank
So
you.
Chair Ottinger,
Yes,
if I
Karen.
may, so I think what you're sensing is the same kind of struggle that staff had trying to work through this. And I suspect that, so we crafted conditions that I think that are for this project more than others, probably a starting point to start to have a discussion. I think this will take the commission some interaction, and I would, and so we'll see where that goes, but I would advise opening the public hearing so you can kind of hear the other side of the story prior to going down the path of more discussion, unless there are questions for the applicant.
Yeah, and I really wanted to bring out the fact that we have this conundrum with findings or conditions that aren't working right now, so that people who are speaking can address those. And in particular, in the public comment period, those of you who are speaking, if you could indicate whether limiting the, going from 2 hours, is it 2 hours in the afternoon, or do you want 2 hours in the evening, or do you not want it at all? I mean, it's important for us to know the level that it's bothering the people who are here to speak in particular, and others who aren't here tonight, because I do really care about your level of tolerance for this. So helping us understand that is really important. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Again, you raise your hand, actual or virtual, and Planning Director Carrie Sponsman will call on you.
Thank you. And for the timer, can we possibly change that to our normal 3 minutes? I'm assuming, Chair, that you want to go back to a normal 3 minutes. I think the 2 minutes is what council uses. We
Yes.
generally use 3 minutes.
Yes, but 3 minutes, and there aren't very many people here now unless you have a lot of other people calling in.
Thanks. Okay, so if you would like to make a public comment, you can either chat, raise your hand virtually, or show your video and raise your hand. I do see Josh Brandt. Josh, please unmute yourself, and can you see the timer?
Yes, I won't take all that time.
Perfect. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yeah, I want to say that I am a neighbor. I live at the end of Johnson Street at the far end. And I work from home, so I'm in my laundry room every day and my windows are open because it's hot. And I hear Peacetown starting up on their Wednesdays, and I'll just close my windows. I mute myself on my Zoom calls. It's not really a struggle. And I also hear the Smokehouse barbecue. And I find the music to be totally unoffensive and not a problem for me, although I'm on the far end of the street. So just as a neighbor in town, I am agreeing with the Smokehouse barbecue music as not really being a problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Hand. Okay. Lynn Dillon, I see your hand raised. Can you
excuse me? Hi.
Can you see the timer?
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
I really appreciate that we're talking about this finally, because it's important, and it's important that everybody's needs be met. I'm on Taft Street, and if you're on Taft Street, it looks like you're looking at buildings on a flat plane, but the backs of our houses go downhill, and all of our gardens and yards go downhill to the backyards of Johnson Street. So that's actually at about the same place where Johnson Street starts to curve away towards the last speaker's home, which is quite a distance and around a corner from the Smokehouse barbecue. Anyway, I think if anybody was in our home or in our backyard when there's music playing that's amplified, they would understand the stress it causes. And if you read the letters from all my neighbors here, you'll understand that we're not making this up. It is seriously difficult for us. We don't know when the music's going to be played, and we don't know for how long, and it's at different times, maybe Thursday, maybe Friday. A couple weeks ago, there was a 5-piece horn band. It wasn't amplified, but that morning I had spent all morning gardening, and I thought, oh good, I'll have an afternoon, I'll sit out in my backyard. I couldn't sit out in my backyard. It was so loud. It gets louder and distorted as it comes up that hill. And down at the bottom of our hill, our neighbors down there actually can barely listen to their television or watch sports when the music is going on. So I wish it wasn't a problem, and I understand that it's difficult, but I've put 33 years of time and money and love into living here, and my other neighbors have been here 35, and there's a young couple that just bought a home 2 years ago who went into shock when the barbecue place in Peacetown erupted one Wednesday. I mean, they're spending a lot of money on their home. And so I mean, maybe the value of our houses go down. I don't care. I want to be buried in my backyard. I want to live here in peace. And I want to be in peace with all my neighbors and all my business neighbors too. So I hope we can work something out.
Thank you, Lynn. Steve, you're next. Can you see the timer? We actually need to reset the time. There we go. Can you see the timer, Steve?
Okay,
Okay, just letting you know, we're locking you out.
no problem.
I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Bye.
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
So I'm affiliated with Lynn Dillon, and our backyard and the backyard as it goes down towards the police station and actually a little bit past our house is a strange acoustic phenomena that is based on the topography of that kind of swale that goes up our hill. And I have basically heard loud music, and I'm like, well, if it's loud here, I'm going down to the barbecue place and listen to how loud it is down there, because it must be deafening down there. It's really not that different. It at the barbecue place and in our backyard sounds about the same. I'm not using a dB meter, but and then Larry said when he walked up Taft Street, it's not the front yard. The front yard is the drummers in the plaza and stuff like that. But the backyards are strangely acoustically tied together. And we've many times, and our neighbors also, have exited the backyard, closed the windows, and either gone away or stayed in the house or something. And it just seems that it's not fair to expose us to that on a regular basis. I was really happy to see the Exhibit B in the recommended conditions of approval, and I saw the Section 1 and I go, wow, that'll probably work, meaning no amplified music, so there would be no discussion of hay bales and where do you point the speakers. So there's that seems like that has to get hashed out, because I would be totally in favor of Exhibit B, Section 1. The inability to control the musicians, I'm a musician, I know everybody likes to get loud, it's untenable because you don't know what you're going to get. And musicians get loud. And so that's kind of a basic defect of allowing that just to be unmanaged. So, so there's, with Section 1, I'm in good shape. Otherwise, I don't know will go on. That's it.
Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
Okay, if there are any other public comments, please raise your hand or unmute yourself. I do see Ms. Dillon has raised her hand again. However, obviously she's already spoken. So Chair Ottinger, I'll leave that up to you. We normally don't allow second comments.
Yeah, if she has new information, she can speak on the new information.
Lynn, can you unmute yourself? Do you have new information?
Sorry about that. I get a little nervous. You did ask that we address Exhibit B, and I'm sorry I didn't do that in my original comment. So I would like to reiterate that I agree with those conditions, and I think we could make that work, especially knowing that it was 3 days a week for 2 hours each, rather than, all afternoon every Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 8. I could never have people over if that happened. I couldn't work in the backyard on the weekend if that happened. And I just want to say also, so I do agree with the recommendations. It's I hope Mr. Vito can work with us on that and try to mitigate the sounds and keep a lovely amount of music going so that his customers like to be there. That would be great. I want it to work out. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other speakers, I will close the public hearing and turn this back to the commissioners. I see Chairperson, Vice Chairperson Fernandez has jumped in. Carrie, did you want to speak first?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this is why I struggled with it and couldn't really figure it out on my own and needed John to kind of help with this. Because this is one of those perennial struggles. A couple of suggestions just related to our code that may be workable. And one, I think, is what you did with Peacetown and the parking situation, which we've suggested here, which is we had a 6-month review period, but this may be something where if the commission is interested in allowing amplification, but making sure that works with appropriate sound mitigations, it is the type of thing where we could do, a review in a month or something like that when there's after there's been a chance to implement some of these, and by that I mean, I would say always turning the amplifications around. I actually am a person who's very sensitive to noise myself. So maybe this is a little bit my public comment as the residents of Sebastopol, but if it doesn't seem like it's loud, well, what if those days no one hears anything? That's only going to increase the patience on those days when it's a little bit louder in my mind. And so, I think some of these can't just be, I don't think these conditions can be just when it's a loud band. I think it really needs to be a consistent measures as you're going through your discussions. But one of the other things you could consider is issuing this with a downtown noise permit so that there are a couple of 2 times per month, I believe is that allows for 2 times per month for 3 hours, I believe it is. You can exceed. So if there are 2 times a month that a louder band is allowed, basically, that also includes all the sound attenuation and whatnot. And so I just wanted to perhaps provide a little food for thought, given what our codes are. In downtown, we do have that provision, and Larry is, unlike the Barlow, which cannot have a downtown noise permit, and this is actually maybe one where we can assist Larry a little bit with controlling Barlow and their noise levels, but the downtown is allowed to do that twice a month where they exceed the noise ordinance by, it's supposed to be only, it's by 10 decibels, so it's not, it's not rockets or anything, but it is perhaps some guidance in that code.
Well, thank you. That does give us some other options. So, Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah. So my question is to staff. Do you know of the complaints that are received? How many of those complaints are complaints that exceed the noise ordinance? In other words, someone says, "Hey, this is too loud," and it's exceeding noise ordinance, versus someone that, "Hey, I can hear the music," or "It's too loud to me." Is there any way, or do we know that information?
Right. Thank you, Vice Chair Fernandez. So this is a really difficult one because of the ambient noise levels. So and there's a lot of ways, if you remember the car wash noise discussion. If you have a louder ambient noise, then you can it's measured in a slightly different way. Our police department has not done that. That would require a professional to come in and do those measurements. And I believe that's actually why the police department on most of these older permits was wise enough to put in a distance from the site from which it can't be heard. I know the Hop Monk is a similar condition. That is an area we regularly have to address as well. Because it's a little bit more measurable and understandable than a noise ordinance when there's more ambient noise from downtown. So I could ask the police department. I don't know if they've done noise measurements on this, but I do know that they've received a number of complaints.
Yeah, because my issue is, and I can certainly understand the neighbor situation, and I would imagine that the sounds from the football game are probably louder than oftentimes the music there or things going on. I mean, you can hear the band. I can hear it from my house, 2 miles away. But that's, but it's not necessarily more than, or exceeding the noise ordinance. So, I can empathize with the neighbors hearing the noise and the music's loud, but is it exceeding the noise ordinance? Is Mr. Vito doing that, or is it just simply noise that is loud and you can hear it, but it's not exceeding the noise ordinance? I think often, and for the neighbors, I can understand them wanting to know what hours and so forth. So that would be something that I would certainly want to make clear, that it's for certain days and from certain hours, from this hour to hour, so at least the neighbors can know that. But my take is that I've been there. I've been to the establishment, and it is very community minded. There are families there. There are people enjoying themselves there. There's a whole petition full of people that enjoy it. And I know that in any given event or music or whatever, you will find some people that just don't like it, don't want it. And we usually end up mitigating to those few, but you've got a lot of other people, a lot more other people that do enjoy it, that do appreciate it. That you go there and it's a sense of community, and it does draw you there. Oftentimes, we've chosen to go there because of that atmosphere, and it's downtown. It's an establishment. He's not most of the time, I think, exceeding the noise ordinance. I would agree that maybe there are some things that we should say, hey, always the stage needs to be turned, the music needs to be turned a certain way. I think that limiting you know, making it so soft. And, you know, again, that's part of, as he mentioned, it's part of the attraction to bring people in. And, you know, limiting in that in some ways also limits the people that are going to go. I mean, if it's just, you know, one person up there, you know, a guitar and very light music, you know, maybe he's not going to get the people to go there. But it is living across the street from downtown. There is going to be noise. There is going to be activity. It's not at 2 a.m. or 11 o'clock at night, you know, from that standpoint. So, you know, that's my take, is that I'd like to figure out a way to instigate certain hours, certain days, certain mitigations, whether it's, you know, to always have the speaker, maybe have a way to have the stage turned a certain way, make sure it doesn't exceed certain decibels from the noise ordinance. But I think we need to also take into consideration the positives that it brings, and the people that do enjoy it. And I know it's not a popular thing to say with, you know, some of the neighbors that aren't enjoying it, but, you know, do we stop the football game? Because, you know, some people I'm sure would say, hey, you know, the football games are there. I can hear the band playing and it's disruptive and we shouldn't have that. So, you know, it's just, you're not going to make everybody happy. But I think that there's just certain things that it's just going to be, it's just life. It's just, you know, part of living in town. You know, you live out in the country, you're going to have certain things, but, you know, it just, I don't know how we're going to make everybody happy on this. You know, but I think we have certain responsibility to do our best, but, you know, we can't mitigate everything to please everyone and exclude a large portion of the population that are also enjoying it in a community, you know, event. So that's kind of my take at this point.
Thank you. Linda Kelly, Commissioner Kelly, would you like to jump in at this point? Or, oh, Debbie Burns, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just, one of the neighbors had commented, I'm just wondering, I think, Carrie, you said maybe you can hear it from your house, and also Commissioner Fernandez has said that he's been there. And that public comment was from their house. It wasn't any different, the decibels, as it was at the restaurant, the establishment itself. So I'm wondering, what is the purpose of this? Because there's a difference between background music at a restaurant and a music venue that is having concerts. So is this like background music while people are eating, or is this really a music venue? Because if it's that loud that people can't hear their TV, how are people communicating or talking at the restaurant? Just to get an understanding of what we're looking at.
Can I ask you a question based on your comments? Are you suggesting that on Peacetown nights in the summers, on Wednesdays, when there is loud music elsewhere, it might be okay to have the loud music, but all other times it shouldn't be loud?
Yeah, it sounds like Peacetown's use permit is for a music venue. And so that seems like the evening where it's a music venue. But for the restaurant, I don't know, for Carrie, you know, do they have music venues, or is it background music? Is there a difference between kind of a concert as opposed to, you know, dining music? I don't know the answer, just kind of a question. I'm not sure if I'm understanding it correctly, but the amount of sound, if you can't hear yourself, you know, that far away, could the diners really be having conversations? Like, has it become a concert venue? And is that make anything different with a use permit?
So in terms of our code, Commissioner Burns, and that's where the, if it's a music venue now, that doesn't give it a different set of requirements in terms of what the city's noise criteria would be, other than the downtown noise permit, which we kind of discussed a little bit in the And because that is specifically for outdoor music in downtown, and that would allow it 2 times a week to exceed the noise ordinance. And so that was considered, and that came out of the general plan, the community vitality and the other policies that are listed there regarding the balancing of noise between business and community vitality and the residential areas.
Did you say 2 times per week or per month?
It's 2 times per month for no more than 3 hours. It's on page 2, and I'm happy to bring it up too, so everyone can see it, as I know there's folks who aren't necessarily.
You all
read that. So
my question, so thank you. I'm good.
Yeah. So they do have some specific hours. I think it doesn't include the Wednesdays, but I think that's our code not recognizing Peacetown and a summer concert series kind of a thing.
And going to 9 o'clock on Saturday, those are different hours completely. That's a music venue.
Yeah, this is a downtown for a reoccurring event, no more than twice a month. So.
Okay, Commissioner Kelly, did you want to speak at this time?
Well, this is a big issue. I've been dealing with putting conditions on music venues for a long time, including Aubergine. It had to not have its doors open. The neighborhood was complaining as well. Had to do it for Jasper's, had to do it for the Hot Monk before it was the Hot Monk. And all of them had to comply with the 50 feet from they were indoors as well. So the doors just couldn't be open towards the residential area and all of that stuff. It seems that we're looking at making an exception that I think could set a precedent. I believe that the louder events that are there, even though enjoyable to the public, has to go by our ordinance. And there is a past resident, unfortunately, who ended up moving away across from your business on Johnson because of all of the noise everywhere. And it wasn't fair. And she shouldn't have had to move away. So when we have to look out after our residences. We knew that when the Barlow got put in there were going to be issues. And when the event doors, the event part was created, I wasn't on the planning commission for only a short time. I'm between council and planning commission. The way that's oriented towards the neighborhood is that should have never happened. And I've been apologized, and the neighbors have been apologized to, but unfortunately it's already built. I'm fine with the acoustic music, maybe a little amplification, but the horns and I just don't think you can equate what the Barlow was doing and that you have to be louder to attract. To me, that's not an adequate response. I sort of feel like you think you're a little bit picked on, and these are ridiculous, the 50 feet, and I just don't know if I trust that you're really listening to what the neighbors are saying. They've complained up on Taft before, but yours is facing directly towards them. So I'm sorry, but I can't see turning the amplifiers towards buildings is going to make any difference. The sound just moves all over the place. So it's unfortunate because I'm a very big music lover, and I've been very sad since Aubergine was closed down. But it is you might need to think of other ways again to increase your patronage in another way. I think it's the space is too small, and that I don't know if you're going to be able to mitigate this. I don't feel any proof or trust. And when I hear that you can't control the musicians, well, guess what? You're their boss. So for the time they're there, and that is not okay. So I don't know what we can come up with, but so far I can't go with anything more than what the city staff has created in their Exhibit B. I thought when I read that, I went, oh, okay, that'll work.
Thank you, Linda. So I'm kind of in that place too. I'm willing to, all the things you said. I feel like this is a restaurant, and restaurants cannot magically turn into music venues, although restaurants usually sometimes do have musicians who play, and it's usually, I always hope, quiet enough that I can hear anyone I'm dining with, rather than it being a music venue for a concert. However, at the same time, since Wednesday is Peacetown, it does seem that the music could be a little louder or of a different type during those Peacetown hours, even though you don't have a permit for that. It really seems silly to try to say you can't make the music when the people next to you are making it. I don't know how to write that exception in, but I agree with you. It doesn't make any sense to say you have to be quieter than Peacetown. That said, I do like the idea of specifically limiting the number of days and the number of hours. And I think the 3 days a week, allowing you to do Wednesday when Peacetown is doing Wednesday, but Saturday and Sunday, you can pick an afternoon or an evening on either day and not do both. I mean, that's what I think the item C is saying, except that I wouldn't at that same time discuss how many singers or instruments there are. If you just strike that out and just look at the days of week and the hours and specify what those are going to be so that residents can plan when to have their guests and when not to have their guests. So I think I would eliminate the requirement that instruments be acoustic, because as we know, they are amplified. But if they're played at a reasonable level during those specific hours, I'm thinking that might be okay. I don't know again about not allowing drums, horns, and accordions, because again, if we do that during those specific hours, that should be okay. It's a limited amount of time when the neighbors can accept that on that day only, during those hours, they aren't going to enjoy their backyard. But that other important element is item D, which is the reasonable methods to attenuate the noise. And I really believe that you should make an attempt, or you must make an attempt to get the permit to agree to move the stage, add straw bales, definitely turn the speakers and reduce the sound of the speakers so that on your property they are no louder than a certain decibel level. I think then I would be comfortable saying you can have music at your restaurant under those conditions. Again, I don't think the Saturday and Sunday should be as loud as Peacetown, because it's not a concert venue, it is a restaurant, and people do like to come to music, but they also like to eat on other days and not have loud music. And I think that's where I'm leaning. I don't know whether anyone else has support for those concepts. Staff might be able to answer that question. I think you roughly did. If any construction is needed to modify the sound at the stage level, if it needs to be moved or anything, we're saying here that they need to get permits or provide drawings. Is that true, Carrie? Because I would think that would be important, that if they were going to make modifications, that the planning department should approve those modifications.
Yeah, so we don't actually have approved plans for this other than what was submitted. But yes, I think this means, I would read this to mean, and John, chime in if I'm wrong here, that this means that if you guys are requiring them to orient the stage in a different way, then they need to follow that. John, is that what you meant? Okay.
And what kind of accommodations should we, or what requirements should we have for the restaurant owner's responsibility to measure the decibels of his performers at the exterior area of his venue or across the street? Should that be something that he should take responsibility for? Because I don't want him to go to all this trouble and then have X number of complaints. That's another thing we need to talk about. And have his permit revoked. That doesn't make any sense, but there ought to be some accountable way. And maybe it's coming back in a month to see if these things, or a month after they're implemented, to see if that makes a difference. I don't know how else to write that in. Require him to take readings at certain locations.
Right, just like I don't know how to write music may be louder on Peacetown nights.
During those Peacetown hours, because what are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to track the conversation here. I'm not doing a very good job of it. I should go back to my pen and paper like I usually do when you guys are talking.
Yeah, well, that concept of Wednesdays when Peacetown is in effect, that's a different situation. That even though he doesn't have a permit to have a Peacetown stage, we have to recognize that essentially he's competing with Peacetown and needs to make some noise.
But that's a little difficult because it is subject to the noise ordinance, but this may be one where we have to try a few things that are easy and see if
it works.
See if things work. I mean, you can get hay bales from the feed store pretty easily, and the stage, my understanding, is pretty. The first time I learned crates.
Yeah.
So it's not an expensive thing to kind of relocate to the other side.
The sound,
and, try to see if some of those sound mitigations work in themselves.
If the sound is going up to this particular group of people on Taft Street, it seems like angling the speakers down or having some buffer on the speaker to, well, I know it'll angle and bounce off another building. I'm on Fircrest, and I don't hear the high school in my front yard, but I hear it in my backyard because it bounces back and forth between the house and the garage. So I understand it's going to bounce all over the place, and that's just the condition. But if it's only for these few hours, I think that's a different situation. I had some questions about the X number of valid complaints. I don't know how we can do that. We have a certain number of complaints already. I don't know at what point those people will be satisfied. Usually if it's noise and it involves stress and the loss of enjoyment of one's yard, you can't compensate for that unless maybe by specifically defining the hours could help, because it allows that person the opportunity to plan and choose when they want to be in their yard or when they want to go away or come on down and have some ribs and enjoy the music. Other than that, I don't know of any other way to not just end up shutting the business down. I'm not happy with that.
And so you have Debbie has had her hand up for a while. And
yeah, okay. Thank you for tolerating my neener with each point. Commissioner Everett Fernandez.
I'm sorry. Debbie, did you have, I think you were before me. Did you have some?
Oh, yeah,
I'm fine. You can go ahead. I'll wait.
I was looking
Okay.
there and then you disappeared and I called him.
Don't worry about
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Okay. We talked about a couple of different things on here. I'm just wondering if it would make sense to take some of these suggestions and modify the conditions. I think that just as we did, for example, with the alcohol license a few weeks back, where allow staff to meet with the applicant to see if there's things that we can do to agree on before it comes back. I'd be willing to meet with Mr. Vito and just see if we can, come up with some solutions, some ideas, to see if we can make this work. I would not feel comfortable making a decision tonight. I think there's just too many other factors, and I think we need to kind of think about it, maybe come back with some different conditions and see what would work and what wouldn't. I think we want to give the applicant at least a chance to see what things can be done he can agree to that might work. And I don't know if he's prepared for that tonight, especially talking about a lot of different things and different angles. So that's my suggestion.
Well, I should always let you talk before me because I'm going to basically say the exact same thing, except for with the caveat of it was my understanding from a comment the applicant made in the beginning that when we talked about those conditions, that would not work for him. The horns, the drums. So I was going to say, in light of that, can we put all this together and do the same thing? Yes, have someone go and try to work with them to see if we can come back at a later meeting and come to an amicable, cohesive compromise. I wouldn't feel prepared to vote tonight. I'd like to give him a chance to come up with a compromise.
Sure. So Commissioner Burns and Vice Chair Fernandez, the one I do have some concerns with that because I have been in communication with Mr. Vito for over a year, and he hasn't implemented any tests at all. So I think other than since the last time when John and I were at site, it sounds like he may have turned the speaker, the amps for some of the louder bands, but not the quieter ones. And so I do have some concerns about our ability to work through that. I would like some, we can go ahead and do that, but I would want some more clear direction from the commission on, I think what I've heard is, clarity on the days and the hours, the mitigation, any times when louder music would be acceptable, like the Peace Town.
I think there's a bigger issue here too, which is, a sense of responsibility. Again, when these bands are playing there, he is their boss. So a buy-in that he is comfortable, letting them know, what the parameters are of playing. So any venue has parameters to play here, whatever those parameters are. So we need, the buy-in, because I keep hearing that, he can't tell them what to do. And, knowing a lot of musicians, they want any opportunity to play. So if they're told the decimal can't be here, sure, they'd rather be louder, but they know this is it. If your team members turn the volume up when you walk away, that makes me feel uncomfortable. It's like there's no leadership there. So, the fact that here's the established rules for this regulation, and they're abided by, or he asks the band to stop playing. I don't think the neighbors need to be the police, force. And I also have an issue with, this being able to be taken away by any complaint, because it's a very difficult situation. So I think, if there's a set of guidelines like you're talking about, and one of them is the buy-in, that he will manage his team, including the bands and the decibel. I think sound is an issue. I also don't have an issue with drums or other, instruments if we're working on a decimal level. Like, I don't know why it matters what it is if we can have the decimals.
So,
And I think that may make sense, and I'm going to try to have a little bit of a conversation that staff would have with the applicant here and just get a sense of things.
Mary, can I just interject?
Oh, please, sorry. Yeah.
The issue of the number of days and the hours, because if he's only doing it during those few hours, he's going to be very specific about who's playing and what they're playing, because it's very limited. And I don't know whether that will work for Mr. Zito. I think that's important to know, because, what's the point of doing this if that issue alone, 3 days a week and 2 hours each. And then whether he wants to pick a time, whether it's Saturday or Sunday, so that the property owners can know when to enjoy their backyards and when not to. I mean, if those kinds of things can't be resolved, then nothing else really matters in my mind.
That's true. Although, can I interject one other thing? If it goes well with the 2 days a week or whatever it is, could we have a caveat that, maybe he could add a day later on? Like, if the complaints aren't there and it's working out and the decimals are handled and the bands are, maybe it could be something we start with that and look to get some, does that make sense, Kathy?
Yeah, it does, when he comes back and at the specified period of time.
Right.
Consider more days.
Right.
Yeah, and this is maybe another option to that. So that, understanding what the days and hours would be, and maybe acoustic music without amplification or with
on the other time.
That very low background music, is okay. And and Mr. Vito did talk about there's times when he does have that, and that's when he's not orienting the speakers away from the neighborhood. And so if that was, if those were done, that may be an option and may be workable.
Okay. Should we allow Mr. Zito to reply to these ideas? Carrie, is that appropriate?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can call on anyone you'd like to who's in this meeting.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Vito, would you respond to some of the ideas we've had? You are muted right now, Mr.
There. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can. I know this is a problem, and I appreciate your compassionate, in-depth look at this. And I know how irritating music can be. I think the older I get, the less tolerant I am for music that I don't like or that's too loud or whatever. So I get it. I really do. I guess, reducing the hours reduces our revenue, and I have the same bills to pay. I have to pay my rent, my bills, my vendors, my staff every month. And so when the hours, if you cut out the hours on the weekends for, like the lunchtime, then, there's going to go a portion of our lunch business and vice versa. I guess we need feedback from Steve about, what's too loud and what isn't. When we have 1 or 2 people playing here, I mean, I don't know if that is audible up there. It sounds like there's some very what is it? It sounds like the acoustics generated by the landform and the buildings and so on is just kind of uh, an oddity, unfortunately, that channels the sound up there and drives those people crazy when they're trying to enjoy their yards or do whatever. And I get that. It's really too bad. And turning the speakers. Well, I don't know that it's necessary for when we have just one or two people playing and they have, I don't know if that's a problem. So, I'd like to work with Steve and his neighbors and hear, is that something that, is this too loud? Does that hurt? And I'd also like, to have like Mr. Fernandez come down or anyone and just, I have a sound meter. I mean, we can listen and say, well, this is what it is in here. This is what it is across the street. But I find that the 65 dB is it's completely unrealistic because, like I said, I can stand on the cars on the sidewalk here on Laguna Parkway and the cars going by are 65 dB. Did I answer any questions? Or am I just rambling?
I was wondering in particular if you were allowed 3 days a week and 2 hours each day, the one day of the week being Peace Down and the other 2 days being a weekend afternoon or evening on either day. Would it be okay then to have unamplified music at other times, like a lunch hour on a Thursday? Does that, where it is acoustic and it is very quiet, it is ambient music.
In my opinion, I think that most of the music that's played here shouldn't be, audible up on Taft Street. That most of it is acoustic because they're acoustic instruments that are amplified. And, it's one or two or three singers. So I don't know what's problematic and what isn't. I'm sure that when a band like Doc Kraft gets here, they can be heard up the street, but so can Peace Town. I mean,
Yep. And Kathy, I would, you mentioned 2 hours on Wednesdays. I don't see why he should be limited. I mean, he should at least have the same amount of hours as Peace Town.
That's true. We really need to separate those two ideas if those are even workable. I'm trying to decide whether this is workable, and I keep hearing it's not because of the nature of music.
And there's
a music venue.
There's also the drum circle on Sundays. I mean, they're loud.
I know.
Really loud. Super loud. So how come they can make a lot of noise and we can't?
It is.
That's a fair question.
Well, and as noted, the police talks to them quite often as well. So it's not. I do
but
just want to
know. They don't talk to us. I haven't seen an officer down here this entire year. And the ones that did come last year said, wow, this is so good. I can't believe they don't like it. I mean.
So I did, Chair Unger, I did just get, because I communicated with the chief, police chief, to see if they had done decibel readings per Vice Chair Fernandez's question. And his response was that when officers have responded to the location, the music was stopped rather than decibel readings being noted. So, and I'm guessing that's because I don't know why it stopped versus just being turned down.
As soon as we saw them coming, I mean, they show up and they say, hey, somebody complained, and the music is playing while they're here. So and one time, one officer, he did take a reading and he said, well, you're in compliance, and he went away. So I don't know.
So if not to get too far down the road of decibels, but just as a general way that it's calculated, just so you take whatever the sound level is, let's call it 85 decibels at the source, so 5 feet away, so someone in the audience, or maybe it's actually 110 feet away, someone sitting at a table listening to it, means that at 55 feet, which is across the sorry, that would then be 65 feet across the street, is still going to be 83 decibels. If you take that down, so this is not accounting for any of the oddity of the topography at all. I do know there is some, because if the sound waves are actually, going up and through, it's a little bit different. But across the street, there's no hill. So this is kind of looking at that original condition that Commissioner Kelly, because I've been thinking about her comments, talked about, of the 50 feet away rule, and why we kind of do that. If you take that down to, and actually, I think we can do this the other way. You might be able to do this the other way to get the 65. So you could do 95 at the site. At
We
65.
don't have 95. Peacetown rarely gets to 95 when you're standing, when you're in the parking lot. I mean, it's rare. Most of the time they're around 90, and they've got bands and amplified, and they're allowed. Down here, it might be, a loud band might be 80 in front of them, and then the sound mitigates as you move across the street and up the street and so on. But generally the music that's played here is probably 75, and then a block away it's 65. So I don't know if it's a problem up there on Taft Street. I'd like to get some feedback during the week, and on weeknights when John Truby shows up and sets up his amp and plays for an hour or two and then goes away.
So I'm sorry, Chair, I don't know if that was any more helpful for this particular situation.
Yeah, well, at this point, I suppose we could entertain a motion. Commissioner Fernandez, is that what you were planning to do?
No, I just would like to offer to work with the applicant and the planning director and social planning director. Let's see if we can work this out. And I know, Kara, that you've spoken with Mr. Vito several times, and maybe hasn't been the response you were looking for, but give me a chance before we go to this. Give me a chance to see if I can assist in this endeavor and save 9 jobs, because it's not fair for them either to lose their job over this, and see if we can come up with something that works, something that Mr. Vito can agree to. It's I think it can't be sometimes you turn speakers and sometimes it has to be, let's figure out something that happens all the time. And I like the idea of also working with a neighbor and being involved, and to see if we can figure something out to make this work. So that's my offer. And then I know we got some of the ideas here, some possibilities, and maybe we don't come up with any. Maybe it's not workable, but I'd like to give it a chance and see if I can help.
Thank you, Everett. Commissioner Burns?
I just want to say I really appreciate your offer, and can I make a motion to take Everett's offer? I think I really appreciate it. I would love to see if you could help resolve this with the neighbors and the business owner and the planning director. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Do I hear a second on the motion that Everett be allowed to some time to work with the planning director and the applicant and the neighbors? Not hearing a second, I will make the second.
So are
This would
we,
be,
little clarification?
Yeah, let's have some discussion on the motion and the second that has been made.
Shall I clarify?
Commissioner Burns, I think, wants to make a clarification.
Are you, I'm asking if you're asking me to be more clear.
No, I was just thinking we should have discussion on the motion that's on the floor.
Okay, my motion is that, you know, Commissioner Fernandez works with the planning director and the business owner and the neighbors to see if he can work with an amicable solution and they can come to a resolution that will help keep the business open, the, you know, the residents happy, and see what he can do.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Commissioner Kelly, did you want to make a comment? It's time for discussion on the motion, if there is discussion.
So that means that are we continuing the application for a temporary use permit, or if that's not part of this motion?
I guess in effect
it would need to be continued, yes, because you're not making a decision tonight. And I am, if you don't mind, I am going to check with their city attorney real quick, just to see if I can get him to make sure it's appropriate for a sitting commissioner who's going to be voting on the item to interact in this way. So I do just want to check on that. And I think if nothing else, staff can interact with Everett. I'm just not sure if a commissioner inserting himself into the process is completely kosher. So I just want to ask for some legal advice on that one, because he's then going to be asked to make a decision and he may be biased at that point. So I just want to make sure that's not the case.
Right.
Yeah, and I would be, yeah, and I'm aware of that. And I'm sure there's certain parameters and that I would have to abide by, but yeah, and maybe, yeah, I think that's a good point for some guidance and direction. I'd be willing to, if it got to that point, I'd be willing to see what I can do and recuse myself. I think it's that important.
So we're waiting to get an answer back, Carrie?
I'm texting as quickly as I can.
Oh,
Thank
okay,
you.
so sorry.
Well, I mean, we can decide to continue it, and then either you know, I'll be involved in some manner, or you know, somehow planning director will speak to the applicant. I'm not sure how, but I think, are we in agreement to you know, continue so that we don't have to necessarily wait on the particulars of what I'm possibly can and cannot do?
Yeah, I think you could continue the application. In that case, I'd do it to a date certain. I just need to
And if Mr. Vito,
we would need to pick a date that is reasonable.
Yeah,
and then
I just want to make sure that would work with Mr. Vito. I know that.
Oh yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
he'd probably. Okay.
So we could go ahead and do that at this time then. Commissioner Burns, are you interested in retracting your motion?
Yes, I will retract my motion. Can I maybe then say that can we put off until we have a chance for the planning director and the applicant and, you know, to work together, or are we just tabling it? Like, what would be helpful right now?
So I think what would be helpful in terms of a motion would be to take do basically what we did in the alcohol permit case, which would be to continue continue the application and direct staff to work with the applicant and the neighbors. Oh, okay, sorry. I just got a response from our city attorney. He says, if given direction, if I'm giving the direction from the entire commission to do it, it would be okay. It's basically an ad hoc committee in that case. Any action must await a subsequent meeting, which obviously we would be doing. So, Commissioner Burns, if you wanted to remake your original motion, it sounds like that is legally okay. It's an ad hoc committee of one, working with staff and the applicant and
I'll
neighbors.
work with you. I'll work with you on it. I'm a good peacemaker. All right. So I would like to make the motion that Commissioner Fernandez works with the neighbors, the business owner, and the planning director to see if he can help come up with a resolution that will enable everyone to coexist peacefully.
Okay. And is it okay to say planning staff?
Yes.
'Cause-
Sorry.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
And does it need to continue to a date certain? Excuse me. Do we need to specify the date?
I think that would be helpful. I think a timeline for all of this would be good. And
I think a reasonable, do you think, I don't know, Carrie, your workload, can you help me with the date?
I'm looking at the future meetings, and I also want to make sure that I look at our forecast because we do have a fairly busy calendar. I know John is getting ready to send out 2 more notices tomorrow. Let's see. Sorry.
Be the 23rd of August or?
Yeah, the 23rd we could probably come back with revised conditions and not a revised report.
Okay.
If that would be acceptable, and perhaps Vice Chair Fernandez can give a verbal report. That
Yeah,
would
my
probably
committee
work.
can report. Yeah.
I'll be on your committee if you need help.
Okay.
Okay, so
Let me just look at what else we have on that agenda though, because that's the one that, oops, that's the council agenda. So we do have 2 items on that. I think one of them is a fairly easy use permit. I think the other is maybe a little bit more. They're both alcohol permits, alcohol use permits. I think one is fairly easy. I think the other may be a little bit more involved. But and then I had a training schedule, but the training obviously can give way to that. So I think the 23rd would work as long as, there's, maybe a 1-page summary and the changes to the conditions. John, does that work with your schedule? I don't.
Yeah, I think so. It just could be a little bit longer night than normal because we'll have those 3 items on there.
Right. And Everett, I have a note that you're going to be out, but you'll be able to participate remotely. Is that still true? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Then we should be good with that.
Okay. So, Carrie, can you call the vote on the motion?
Sure. Commissioner Burns?
yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fernandez?
Yes.
And Chair Ottinger?
Yes.
All right, that motion carries 4-0.
Okay.
So
And
Larry,
we'll coordinate. Yeah.
Yeah. So Larry, Steve, and Lynn will coordinate with you. Lynn, I'm going to ask you to unmute in case you have any questions about this process.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to work together on this. I've often wished that we could meet with Mr. Vito and share all our concerns. I have a question about while this permit is being considered, is the music allowed to continue to occur? And if so, what type and how often? Thank you.
That's an excellent, thank you.
Mhm.
So Chair Ottinger, you can entertain an additional motion regarding that if you'd like, or the commission may if they like.
Are you suggesting that we ask Mr. Vito to be on really good behavior during this time?
I thought we had been on good behavior. I don't know. I haven't heard any complaints. Is the music loud up there on Taft Street these days?
Ms. Dillon, did you
Lynn?
want to respond?
Well, there was the matter of the horn band.
How long ago was that?
The end
Chair
of,
Ottinger, Chair Ottinger,
Yes, Linda?
I'm uncomfortable with this going back and forth right
Okay.
now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's what the continuance
Yeah,
of the motion
that's
was.
fine.
We'll be
Right,
doing.
right.
We'll be having
We're
those
gonna
discussions.
continue it, and I don't know what happens between now and then,
Well,
frankly.
we don't have any large bands booked on weekends for the foreseeable future.
So I would suggest if it sounded like there was consensus
And-
on the
and
Peacetown night.
And on Peacetown, we've just had Ricky Ray with his, playing blues and probably an electric guitar. I'm not sure what he plays, but I don't know that we've been making a lot of noise down here lately. Is that, well, I can't ask you. Well,
So
Lynn, give me
legally,
a call and tell me how it's been.
Yeah, legally, what should we do,
Okay.
Carrie?
legally, the original condition from the alcohol use permit stands. So they're allowed to have music as long as you can't hear it on the other side of the Greener Parkway. If the commission wanted to allow, like the downtown noise permit allows, the Peacetown evenings, then it would probably be helpful to have a motion. That
Yeah,
could,
I'd be supportive of that.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we allow Peacetown music to fall under different conditions. And I don't know what to say.
right,
what
and so those would be,
are.
those would be the same, and actually you could reference the same conditions that Peacetown has
So
in terms of music, yeah.
referenced. Okay, I guess we call the vote for that issue.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kelly?
I'm gonna say yes. It won't be long, and hopefully we'll have some more information coming forward.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be what, two Wednesdays worth of music. So, Commissioner Burns
Yes.
and Vice Chair Fernandez
Yes.
and Chair Onger.
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Vito, I believe we've just made you an official part of Peacetown.
Yay!
I was a vendor for the old Peacetown for a year, and then that went away.
I love that.
Yeah, the old Peacetown was pretty special, I thought. I miss that.
Thank you for your efforts to do what you can with the neighbors. Now, moving on to regular agenda item number 6. Thank you for staying with us through this, those who are here for that issue, the Calder Creek Naturalization Project. And I believe
I'm going to go take some ribs out of the pit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair, can we just have a 2-minute break?
2-minute break.
3 minutes?
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Yeah, just,
Okay.
yeah, 3 minutes. That,
And Sam Rosette, can you please make Jessica a co-host if you have not, so she can share her screen?
is that okay, Jessica? A couple minutes. Oh, you're muted?
I'm still disabled. Let me try again.
Oh.
We can hear you now.
Yeah, I can't screen share yet.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe that you guys can work that out if you just give us a, just a couple minute break and then we'll continue on.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I'll be discontinued for 3 minutes. It looks like we're all back now. I see all the commissioners. Okay, I will restart the meeting of August 9th. Carrie, did you want to start off?
Sure, I'll do a quick intro, just as to where we are at. And first I want to apologize, the staff report got put at where it should be, actually behind the really beautiful brochure that Jessica has put together for us for this project. This is the final presentation for the Calder Creek Naturalization Project. With the caveat that Jessica Hall, our Switzer Fellow, who's been working with us, will be doing as a Switzer Fellow. If you recall, the last step was to look at the options. The City Council recommended the option B, which keeps the ball fields, and they had some modifications or just suggestions about some of the elements within the park. Jessica and WRI have gone through and further developed the both that option. We've had some meetings on the Jewel and Willow intersection area, including with the city's traffic consultant, to get that to a conceptual stage. And so I don't think the commission has seen that tonight. She'll be presenting that, as well as some sort of longer range vision for downtown and east of downtown. And so this is her final presentation, as noted. We will be getting your input on this, and we do plan to bring this with hopefully with your blessing, that they both approve the phase 1 of this, which is the Ives Park portion of it, provide feedback on the phase 2 and 3. And I apologize, I don't know if it's all called, sorry, Jessica, if it's all called phase 2 or if there's a phase 2 and a phase 3. I was thinking of the phase 2 as being east of downtown, where the city owns the land to Railroad Forest, and phase 3 being downtown, but to provide feedback on those.
I think some of the feedback could be what the phases should be called.
Thank you. For the next steps of this, we are also looking at, so we had a service agreement with Waterway Restoration Institute to be able to get the pro bono work from them and from Jessica for this phase. I've been in discussions with them, and actually their kind of partner organization, California Urban Stream Partnership, which is the co-directors are Ann Riley and Josh Brandt, and I think both of you, Josh, thank you, he is back, are here tonight, but we are recommending a similar service agreement for them to be able to continue working with us. They are currently working on a pre-application for a grant. It's sort of like a letter of interest with me for a coastal conservancy grant. And so we will be asking council to approve a service agreement to continue that work, and then also authorizing them to submit the grant proposal on behalf of the city. And so that is some wonderful work they've been doing. And I will go ahead and turn it over to the team. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna share my screen, and I did email, I think I saw that you received it, Carrie. I emailed this presentation so that you can include it on any materials that you need to. It is a recap of the sort of Calder Creek Vision Plan document that we put together. And hi everyone, it's great to be here again. It's been a few months, and this really is for us kind of putting the bow on the whole creek restoration visioning process that we've undertaken, both myself as Wildling Design Studio and Riley with Waterways Restoration Institute. And as Carrie mentioned, we brought CUSP, the California Urban Streams Partnership, into that, which includes Josh Spratt. And also now me, I'm being folded into CUSP to continue to do this work with the CUSP team, which is Riley and Josh and a couple other folks on staff. So I just want to dive right in. For us, the planning process has encompassed looking not just at the creek at Ives Park, although that was really the genesis of it, was starting there, but in addition to looking and working with some property owners upstream of here and looking at their properties and just giving some advice about how they could work with the creek on their properties. We took the creek all the way to the railroad forest in terms of thinking about ideas for the creek. And a quick recap, for us, started off looking at it as 4 reaches: the intersection, Ives Park, the downtown reach, and the railroad forest. Through our process, and because the intersection is really integrally connected to Ives Park, that is now being seen as one reach. And we, as you know, did some site analysis, looked at drainage areas, looked at what we call hydraulic geometry, or the sort of stream channel design parameters, that the shape of the channel, the sinuosity of the channel, its stream profile, its slope. All these kinds of considerations were all factors that drove our design process. We also looked at site conditions, including things like the utility infrastructure that have to be thought about along the way with the design process. And I just bringing that as a quick reminder of some of our steps that we've taken. And so diving into where we're at, as you recall, and as Carrie mentioned, we came to you with some alternatives and the alternative that we were given the go-ahead after City Council saw the updated charrette and stable plan form alternatives was to move forward with developing the updated charrette concept. And so we took that, we worked it into a grading plan, we coordinated that with some pathway work and trails. We wanted to get ADA trails throughout as much of the park as possible. We wanted to reincorporate, as you know, all of the elements from the master plan. And so this is what we have to present to you as a kind of finalized Calder Creek restoration informed master plan project. We have 16 areas called out on our site plan there, starting at Jewel Avenue with a T intersection that creates a new sort of entry point to the park. At that entry point, I have a trellis coming over the pathway with a small rose garden off to the side, so some quiet meditative moment. And as you go into the park from there, the trail splits. To your left is part of a loop trail that goes along the creek where it's daylighted about 40 feet further away from where you currently have the pipe. And you're able to then walk a loop around the park, around the creek. But if you go to your right, you're directed to some of the amenities that you're familiar with, where the redwood trees are, that lead you towards an oval green, which you see as number 8 on the plan. If you were to stay alongside the creek on the outer ring of that oval, you'll walk along the creek again. And part of that is boardwalked so that it protects the roots of the redwood trees. And there's an overlook crossing the creek at that location that's part of that boardwalk system. So there's a neat little moment there where you can take in the creek and again, loop around the loop trail. As we're moving through the park, there's some relocated picnic areas. Item number 6 on the plan. Let's see if I can point. You can see my cursor. Item 6 is a stage. And so it's nestled towards around the creek. And so people at the park will have some shaded views of the stage and some open areas where they can listen without being focused on the stage itself. And this was something that came up as a suggestion that we followed through with. And that we have, maintenance of access and passage and a bridge rated for vehicles at number 11. Before we go any further through the creek, at the entry off of Jewel on the upper end of it, there is you walk in at a higher elevation. The creek is quite a bit lower here. And so there's a ramped access down to the creek, or there's steps coming down. And so this is a nice little point where you can see over the creek and get in a nice view of the park as a whole. And then coming back to here, this is kind of a nice little nexus of pathways. And it takes you, as you know, to the swimming pool, to the restroom area. And further along the creek, there's a few picnic spots kind of nestled in along the trees. The playground has been relocated just a little bit. Like today, it's more like here. So it's been moved over. And there's a barbecue area that would have been here originally, is relocated over to here. And there's some existing picnic barbecue spots that remain. So there is still a small lawn area here, as well as a lawn area here and over here, in addition to our sort of great lawn over at number 8. Coming through the park, you come along here. And number 15 is where we have the sculpture garden or art walk. I've kind of been using these terms interchangeably. And as we've discussed previously, there can be sculpture mounts on both sides of the trail. So some of the sculptures maybe are on the slopes and have the backdrop of the creek as part of their sort of scenery or staging. On the opposite side of the creek, the trail is following some steeper grades. There are areas where you're right along the creek where you can get down to the channel. And then there's areas where you have a low sort of seat wall separating you from the creek. But you're able to see it and feel very connected to it all the same. And that brings you all around. And part of why we did that is to maintain ADA access along the grades through the trail here. So that gives you kind of an overview. Another way of looking at this design is in section. And so this red line here, I'm going to show you a section, means a cut through of that. And so this gives you a sense of what that feels like. On the left here is that stage with the redwood trees along it. The creek is gently sloping down to its floodplain. You can see that a little kid might be dashing across the creek right next to the vehicular bridge. There's in the background, you can see that boardwalk along the redwoods and that overlook that's also part of the boardwalk system over the creek. And people taking that other pathway along the creek coming down where they're really right at the creek elevation here. And then as they're coming back up in grade, there's this low seat wall along the edge. And at the top of Jewel, that spot I mentioned where you come in and you're at higher elevation. And so you have this really nice view over everything going on in the park. So that's, gives you a snapshot idea of what we're envisioning. Oh, and I neglected to mention this nice little picnic area that's nestled in along the creek. And then from the art walk, if you can imagine standing here, this little, inset of the park, if you're standing at this location looking down along the pathway, you might see some sculptures, and forgive my silly ideas about what sculptures look like. You will have much nicer things, I'm sure. So anyways, so here you are, look, you're viewed down the pathway. There's a little bit of channelization along the very entry here because of the just narrow confines. But because of this design, you have a soft bottom and you still have habitat along here. And so you still have this nice creek feeling. And again, this trail drops down around here so that you can get down to the creek very easily and play in it if you like. So this gives you a little idea of what we're imagining for Calder Creek. We've done a grading plan. It's been part included in some hydraulic modeling that GHD did for the city of Sebastopol. And we do have Jeremy Svela from GHD available to answer any questions people have about the hydraulic modeling. My non-technical take on it is that what we are showing here doesn't negatively impact any of the flooding issues that you have downstream. And again, non-technically and not part of the technical memo is that, as we have discussed previously, having this floodplain, having the creek be natural and sinuous and flooding means that as the water is moving more slowly in flood times, you're getting more infiltration into groundwater. And so there is a sort of passive benefit to water supply in that sense. It's not like a recharge facility or anything like that, but you are getting some attendant kind of additional benefits that this project brings. Moving into the downtown reach, we have two areas between High and Main and between Main and Petaluma. And, some of this involves private property. Some of it is, in areas where people are like parking lots, people are already using some of these areas for other things. And so, it would take a much larger community process, I think, to really say, this is what's going to happen here. So what we're really doing here is showing you what could happen here. So it's really a visioning exercise to explore what the potential is with having a daylighted creek through downtown. And so focusing first on this reach between High and Main Street, want to point out, so we have our daylighted creek coming through this area. It's parking lot and driveway along the taco shop. We have a boardwalk that runs along here, and part of the rationale is that we have a sewer line, and so the boardwalk can be part of what protects the sewer line. And we also have an overlook. So wanted to create the possibility for walking on both sides of the creek, and for also the idea that future development along either side might benefit by having these walkways along the creek. And so it becomes something that is provided that's an asset for future development. So we have this overlook here at number 3. We don't have number 4 in this key applies to the 2 different site plans. So number 4 is on the other one. We have some seating areas at number 5 where the boardwalk bumps out. So you can imagine how someone who comes to the taco shop could come and sit out here and enjoy their food with a view of the creek, for example. And we have creek access. I have some steps and some ramping. So somebody in a wheelchair or somebody who doesn't want to take steps can come down and enjoy a moment along the creek and then safely get back up. There's also steps to the creek on the Main Street side. So that enables someone who's really, loves to explore, can enjoy getting in and out of the creek. And then this is a concept sort of sketch of what this might look like in a redevelopment type scenario where you have your daylighted creek, you have the boardwalk, walkway. There's the seating area is also an overlook, so it's doubling its functions there. And just noting that people are down in the creek in the sketch, so there's that creek access that we talked about. So that gives you an idea of what the potential might be down the line. In the Main Street to Petaluma reach, we what we're replacing here is an area of greenery that has the train and some parking areas. And looking up close, we have our daylighted creek. We have some overlook areas that line the creek. And really, this whole walkway, everything here is basically an overlook to the creek in many ways. We have a promenade that is a wider area of walkway along the creek. And we have seating areas that can be built into that, or terraces that can serve future development if the parking lot ever got changed into a different use, or if you maybe on special occasions had food trucks in the parking lot, so events like that. You can really take advantage of this kind of space for those uses. And then we have creek access. Again, a nice meandering ramp that takes you down to the creek, as well as some steps and a ramp to do that. And that just, again, getting people close to nature. And then on 7, we have this walkway kind of along the creek. So, and here's a sketch that illustrates what that looks like to me. We've got our creek at number 1. We've got folks enjoying the creek at the bottom. It's people using that stair and ramp system to get down to the creek. People having their meal, enjoying the views and the environment, the shaded cool of the creek. We have our nice promenade with an alley of trees. And then, in this scenario, I'm sort of showing what the potential is for redevelopment here, kind of thinking about mixed use potential, but also showing that there is still parking lot. So it's sort of, like I said, it's a vision. So, nobody should get too, we're just showing what can be done in this area. And then going down to the railroad forest. This is an area we didn't develop as specifically. What we see is, and I think that you may hear more about this, but what would really benefit the creek, right now it's underground in 2 pipes from Petaluma Avenue to about this location here, about 300 feet. And the railroad fill is what we walk on. And you have these mature, wonderful trees on both sides of that railroad fill. The conventional thing would be to cut out the trees and daylight the stream, but we've got all this railroad fill. And so what we're thinking would be a desirable solution here might be to actually remove that railroad fill and install a boardwalk system that connects you from Petaluma Avenue to the trail at the point where it daylights already. And so we just kept it very schematic. What that does is we open up the pipe here at the very beginning of Petaluma Avenue. It creates a lot of room for the creek to find its own path and to create its own habitat. And it would preserve most of these trees that, you have beautiful oaks and willows in this area. And so that's what we're proposing as a concept to explore more in the future for this area. So with that in mind, that is my presentation for you. I don't know if you want me to go back to any slides for discussion, or if there's anything else you would, if you have any comments or feedback for us.
And I would, before we touch on that, if it's okay, I would like to introduce Jeremy, and I'm going to slaughter your last name, Jeremy, I'm sorry, from GHD.
It happens all the time.
Svehla?
Savella, yeah.
Savella, thank you.
It's a tough
Okay.
one.
I tried the
evening,
Swedish
everyone.
way, it didn't work, okay. He and I are right next to each other in the alphabet, but clearly not country or of origin. So he has done the hydrology report. It's not included in your packet. Staff is currently reviewing that, but I did want him to just say a few things about it, basically testing out what Jessica was doing and working in tandem to make sure that everything that we're doing is realistic. So Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Carrie, for the opportunity. Good evening, everyone. And Jessica, beautiful graphics as always. And really well vetted concepts as well. And so that was really the focus of GHD's work, was to look at the concepts through a hydraulic model. Hydraulic model simulates the flow through the creek at various flow events. These are events that are created by rainfall runoff that have different probabilities associated with them. So what we want to understand is we want to understand how the creek responds to these different flow events and relative to existing conditions. And so when we originally engaged on this work about a year ago, it was at a time when the concepts to daylight the channel through the downtown area had not really been developed yet. So we were really focused on looking at the hydraulic capacity through Ives Park. So we focused on that. We took Jessica's concepts that she developed with WRI that you just saw, and we ran those through the model. And the model results yielded very positive supportive results in terms of what we could expect in terms of the flow velocities and some of the assumptions that were made in terms of the geometrics of the creek and the preliminary design work that Jessica and WRI had done. So the model was really a proof of concept, and it will now serve as a tool to advance forward the stream restoration concept. Should that work move forward, the model will be used as a tool to evaluate the different types of treatments that might be necessary along the creek to understand or to withstand erosion. The bridge crossings that you saw will need to further evaluate the scour potential for the abutments and really better understand the types of revegetation that might happen and some of the other measures that go into stream restoration and how that modeling tool would be used. So that portion of the modeling, like I said, yielded positive results for the concept that was put forward. What we noticed, though, one note to that, and Jessica alluded to it, was that the flooding that the city experienced in October, I think it was October 24th of last year, along Petaluma Avenue, that was pretty significant. The avenue closed. And so we really wanted to focus on, part of our study was to look at and evaluate the cause of that flooding. So we shifted from the Ives Park area and moved down and looked in that area as well. And so the proposed improvements along Ives Park would not in any way increase the flooding down at Petaluma Avenue, nor would it necessarily make it any substantially better. So I just want to be really clear about that. While the naturalization would certainly increase the infiltration capacity and potential reduction there, it wouldn't be during really high flow events, it would be somewhat negligible. So I just want to be clear that any improvements to Calder Creek and the Ives Park Reach wouldn't in any way benefit or necessarily impact negatively the flooding that you experienced in October. So let's talk about that flooding a little bit. As some of you might know or be aware of, the storm drain pipes basically from High Street down to the Laguna or down to the railroad forest area that Jessica just presented. In some locations, the pipes, the storm drain pipe underground, are right next to one another. There's two of them in parallel, and some of them, in some sections, actually have sediment in them and are partially plugged. We, as part of our work, conducted a survey of those where we were able to lift manhole lids off of the storm drain manholes, and then our surveyor was able to take elevation shots along there. So we have a pretty good understanding of the volume of sediment and the location of where the plugs have occurred. And we were able to simulate that or analyze that in the model, the hydraulic model. And so what we learned is fairly predictable, and that is that the plugged culverts are indeed the primary cause of that flooding. But another cause is the elevated or graded, it's where sedimentation in the channel has come up down at the outfall of the storm drain pipe system down through that railroad forest reach that we just talked about. There's also a non-native tree, it's a maten, I believe, a matron. Maten, thank you, Jessica. There's a root wad, and it has created a constriction in the channel, and it's actually elevated and a graded sediment behind it. So there are some maintenance related items that really are at this point for the city, they could consider that in these lower reaches. They would be what I would consider to be short-term potential band-aids. They wouldn't necessarily be a long-term sustainable solution as we think about stream restoration and we think about natural systems and lower maintenance. We really want to consider the multi-benefits that you would get from having a daylighted creek, and not just the flood benefits from it and the reduction in maintenance, but also some of the ecosystem services and ecosystem benefits that it would provide as well. So we did provide in our memo some costs that were really focused on doing some of this maintenance work. And frankly, they came out to be pretty expensive. And again, these would be short-term fixes that would provide immediate benefit to the city from a flood reduction standpoint. But the potential for the sedimentation to occur again, the potential for ongoing maintenance to be needed would still be there. And so we want to just be really clear that those costs will reduce the flooding, but with them, there'll probably be a long-term consideration too that would be needed. And the concepts that Jessica and the WRI team have put forward are going to provide a longer-term, a more resilient solution for the city. If the time comes that would be considered, then you guys will have the model available and you can use it to evaluate those different concepts. So that's it, in a real quick nutshell. And Carrie, you've got our report, obviously, and it is dense. There's a lot of information, a lot of graphics, and a lot of modeling runs. But what we did not model was the daylighted culverts between High Street and Petaluma Boulevard.
Sure.
Again,
No,
those
that was not
concepts
your
came
scope,
on
yeah.
board after we had already kind of established the purview of the work that we were going to do. So that would really be the next step as a proof of concept. But based on our experience working on urban stream restoration projects, we're pretty confident that the concepts that Jessica's put forward here would work from a hydraulic standpoint and from reducing the flooding and meeting some of the flood reduction goals that would be needed. So that would be a next step. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'd like to add to what Jeremy's saying is that there's something called like the effective channel dimensions. And those are the dimensions that really help to move water and sediment through the system. Yep. Riley had gone out to the railroad forest and observed a sort of reference dimension that would be ideal to use through probably parts of the downtown area because it has a very similar profile slope. Yeah. And so that's all part of what I think if we're able to move forward with visioning and developing concept plans through those parts of town, that we can start to really refine that and, and model it and see what that brings to the city in terms of multiple benefits.
Right.
Well, thank you very much, all of you. I'm just so excited by this happening. I know it's going to be a long, arduous path between here and there, but this is a really good start. I'm just really tickled.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Well, it's our pleasure to have been able to work on it, and we look forward to continuing to work on it with you.
Okay. Do commissioners have questions? Chair Fernandez?
Vice Chair.
Vice Chair, I'm sorry.
Past some of our bedtime, it's okay.
Well, Jessica, Riley, and Jeremy as well. Every opportunity that I get to just thank you for all you've done, and really appreciate it. It's a project that been sitting on the shelf, and it's kind of a fantasy, someday, and this really brings it really to reality, and everything that you guys have done. So just again, my appreciation for that. Jeremy, you'd mentioned about the sediment and the short-term solution for the flood relief. I'm just wondering if there's a way to look at a cost that you said is very expensive that the city might have considered, had we not had this plan, to say, hey, we need to spend this money for the short-term relief, and instead apply that to the creek restoration.
That's right.
And look at it as a longer term solution, and give it one more positive way to look at it.
Yeah. We would absolutely advocate and recommend that. Once some grant funders are going to really look at multiple benefits of a project. So one might put an emphasis on flood reduction, one might put an emphasis on habitat restoration, where you can marry these benefits or stack these benefits to get the greatest good for the community and for the environment is where a grant application is probably going to be the most successful. Some grant applications, particularly through FEMA, which you now have a hazard mitigation grant program, a hazard mitigation plan that's been approved. This project is in it. It actually requires that you demonstrate a flood reduction benefit that has to be quantified, and that the cost of the avoided flood damage is equal to or greater than the cost of the project. So there might be a strategy here to not necessarily do the maintenance right now, and essentially recognize that the damage that it's providing or that that's occurring will actually help the city in ranking that application through FEMA and through Cal OES. So that is just one consideration, not to say that the flooding isn't a concern and that it needs to be addressed, and that we recognize it is an inconvenience and there is damage associated with it. But the point here is that clean out, that the cost to do that maintenance is pretty high. And wouldn't those dollars be better spent on maybe a more longer term fix? So I think that the city needs to kind of consider that as they think about their strategy and applying for different funds. And the way the plumbing of the system is set up right now, you can really look at these potential phases independently of one another. Ives Park and the restoration there that's planned, that could be a very discrete approach with certain grant funders. And because it doesn't increase or decrease flooding downstream, that downstream reach could be looked at through maybe a different set of grant funders. The point is that there is an opportunity here, I think, to consider that, Commissioner, and recognize that those dollars for maintenance might be better served for a permanent project.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, that's great.
I have one question. And the use of the boardwalks, are those generally considered to be real wood products or faux wood products? And are they anchored or supported underneath with concrete or something that holds up longer than wood?
So there's
How are they usually constructed?
that's a great question, and there's lots of options. So it can be actually made with natural wood. It can be made with fiberglass, with steel, aluminum. There's a range of options. A lot of places do use steel braided material, which allows water to pass through it if it's raining, for example, and gives you a little bit of light through the decking material, which helps with habitat below the deck. In the case of what we're showing, it's a mix of boardwalks that are cantilevered off of floodwalls and and boardwalks that are supported by piers or pilings. And the specific detailing on that would come in the future phases, including the materials.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
One other question I had is that since this is an urban park, do you have experiences with urban parks? Because I just feel like so much of the creek area will be trampled and, kids will dig in the rocks a little bit. And, I know if there's just a regular maintenance problem, we'll probably need to have a group of volunteers who help restore and maintain the landscape. But is there any way to, if that becomes a problem, is there any way to put in more hardscape in some areas where that's occurring?
I don't know that you need to put in more hardscape. It may be good to have some areas fenced off temporarily while plants start to get established. But Willow, for example, where Willow, a lot of urban park creek restoration projects have a combination of staked willows, staked cottonwood. In this site, I don't think we're really looking at cottonwoods, but we are thinking that willows would be very strong candidates, and alders. So we might plant some container plants, and we can put in a range of sizes. So some will come in larger. They take longer to establish and grow, but being larger, people recognize them as trees. And then the seedlings, or the smaller 1 gallons, for example, size or tree pot size plant material, you put it in the ground, it establishes, the roots take very quickly, and then they just shoot right up. So, the establishment period isn't necessarily very long. And in willow just takes, it's a floodplain plant. It takes a beating on the regular and comes back. And Riley has experience on a numerous urban park creek restorations in highly urbanized areas with greater population densities than Sebastopol. And I don't know, Riley, if you want to add any notes about what you've seen in the projects that you've worked on in those settings.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Maintenance is always brought up as an issue by cities. And I don't know if Carrie brought up that we're trying to help the city get some grant monies to get started. We're donating, the California Urban Streams Partnership is donating its time to get a preliminary grant proposal into the Coastal Conservancy. And one of the things that we wrote into this proposal is that we would try to prepare an operations and maintenance manual for this creek and Ives Park in particular, which would probably involve training volunteers and training the city staff for how to maintain something that's really different than what we have there now. So it's learning a different paradigm. But your city staff are certainly very capable of maintaining a different kind of a system. And I think it will be not a difficult thing in this very enlightened environmental town to find volunteers or schools or even the junior college to involve its students in maintaining it.
And I can note that some of the things, we work closely with the Laguna Foundation. They do a lot of restoration and maintenance for us in the Laguna area. But we also, like for Tamagotchi Park, where there's wetlands, our public works park staff are trained by like Prensky Chatham and biologists to make sure that they are maintaining things as they should be. So for instance, they don't mow the grass out there in certain areas because they're wetlands and that's habitat. And so that they're trained on that on an ongoing basis.
Okay, that'll certainly help. Yeah, thank you.
And a lot of the things that are better environmentally, I will say, are a lot less maintenance. I just saw an article today about U.S. lawns and water consumption. And I'm thinking, I didn't have any lawn, but I seeded some native fescue clumping no-mow stuff, and it turns brown in the winter and green, or brown in the summer and green in the winter. I don't do anything with it. So some of that stuff may actually be easier depending on how it's developed.
Yeah, not to mention that there'd be less chain link fences to worry about painting or replacing.
There is
Correct.
that.
Correct. And I am working on the Libby Park one too.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you. That will be so nice. I can hardly wait. I really can't wait. I hope it happens before I pass. Set the timer. Any other questions from commissioners?
I actually have something for Carrie while everybody's here. This is all such great information. Is this going to be presented to council, and how can we get more public involvement to kind of see what's going on? Because we can try to get the public involved as much as possible, and we think we have them involved, and then at the end it's like, hey, nobody told us, or why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? So how can we, and maybe Riley and Jessica can, give us some assistance on this, a process that works, that gets people bought into it, and stakeholders, and moves things ahead. I'd like to hear what you have any suggestions on that.
Yeah, as we've been talking about our pre-proposal and what we want to apply for funds for in the next round, one of the things we would like to do is put together a real public outreach program that includes community design charrettes for these areas of the downtown reach in particular, as well as at Railroad Forest. And we would like to even, this is just thought right now. We're not sure that this will work, but we would love the idea of hosting a kind of invitational design charrette with your local Sebastopol design professionals, and have local people vision what could be done around a living creek through downtown. And I think things like that would get people it would get people to put ideas out there, test them graphically, foster discussions, and raise the profile of the creek and excite people about what's possible. And, and alongside that, we would like to do extensive outreach with the property owners to see what they're comfortable with.
Right. And one thing to note, which has actually happened since the last time I talked to Jessica, is the maybe I can share it, this section of it. There is I'm just trying to find it on, it's in the downtown. There we go. This parcel, right? Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so this is actually 3 parcels. It's 1, 2, and this is in a parcel by itself, probably because it has an easement over most of it, I believe, because of the sewer and the creek, are all for sale right now. So, I don't know if they would consider selling the one parcel separately or whatever, but I have been in discussions with a couple of housing developers actually interested in the site to ask some questions, as people do to the planning department. And so John and I met with one recently, and but so that that's no longer necessarily a completely committed site. Could the city buy that parcel of it? Certainly that's something we can investigate and kind of know what's going on by the time we go to council. Because that would certainly go a long way to just, having the control over that parcel.
Absolutely.
And Carrie, another question for you is, I know they've designed the creek through Ives Park, the natural area, but the other areas like the Rose Garden where the picnic tables are, is that something that also goes through the public process for the new master plan that we've talked about, where we can look closer at those areas?
Yes, we will need to do that. And we actually, I think we scheduled that in our work plan update that we just did.
Okay. So
So I think the push was to get this grant for the further development, because if we get this grant from the Coastal Conservancy, my understanding, and Ann and Josh, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that will kind of get us to the 65% kind of construction stuff for the creek in the park, which basically is considered shovel ready for other grants. And so, other grants where you have to have a certain amount of work done, we can't apply for. This one is one of those few that does do that planning stuff and the engineering side of it. And so we definitely, to keep this ball rolling, that was kind of what we have in the budget for this year, is to focus on that. And then while that's happening, because these types of things do take time, the next thing would be to, all those other elements in the park that are kind of illustrative, they aren't set in stone. What parts of other than the ball fields, and we know the sculpture area is going to be somewhat over in that area where it is now, since it just opened. But those concrete bases are movable or replaceable pretty easily if they need to shift. The other elements that need to move because of the creek, we need to work out, the the revised master plan. And so that would be after this big push on, let's try to make the creek naturalization a reality.
Okay. Good. It's just so exciting. So at this point, if there aren't any more questions or comments, we need to approve this.
Well, first you need to open for public comment.
Oh, we have
I'll
public.
just remind you. That's okay, because all you've done so far is questions and a
Yeah,
couple thank yous.
wasn't
So
in the public comment section, so I didn't expect that. Yeah, I'll learn maybe. Okay, I will open the public comment period now. Again, if there are members of the public who'd like to speak, please raise your virtual or actual hands.
okay. And I don't see any, thank you.
Okay, then I close the public period, comment period at this time.
All right, and I will bring up the what we're asking you to recommend, because it's kind of a 4-point piece. And if I'd had a little bit more time, I probably would have done a resolution for this, so I apologize for that, but we wanted to get this to you. So here's what we're so you've received the report. So this would be a motion to recommend that council approve phase 1, which is the Ives Park alignment and concept. The second one probably isn't needed, but to give feedback on the future phase concepts. Approve a service agreement for us to work with CUSP, and to authorize CUSP to submit the grant proposal to the Coastal Conservancy on behalf of the city.
Okay.
And if anyone wants, they can just raise their hand and say, I so move. You don't have to repeat it.
I so move.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair Fernandez.
Do I get a second? I so second.
I think that's appropriate. This is our Ives Park subcommittee members.
Yeah, and I think it is perfect as chair for me to do that, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And before we just, since we're in discussion, I'm just wondering if Riley or Jessica, if you have anything else you might that we should add. I know you probably already seen this, and maybe this is coming from you, but just wanted to make sure there was nothing else or any other details we might ask for.
No, I think we're fine. You know, at this point, I'm going to be working directly with Carrie to draft up a service agreement that it's a lot like the last one we did, which is $0 for the city. But
well, all right.
I'm a tough negotiator. Yeah. What can I say?
And
someone comes to me and says, we want to help you. And I go, okay.
So Josh and I had a very positive meeting with a representative of the Coastal Conservancy who encouraged us to do a pre-application. Mm-hmm. And so we are pretty close to done with that, actually. And they asked us to submit our Waterways Restoration Institute Basis of Design report. We'll also submit the GHD hydraulic modeling and the work that we've done on the concept designs. And they feel that the next step is to find the right program in the Conservancy that would be willing to fund this. So the way this is written, I feel like we could get a pre-application in and work on a grant proposal and keep moving this thing forward. So I'm happy with the way this is written.
Great. And Carrie, any idea when this would go to council?
It would either be, I think we were looking at either the first meeting in September as the earliest we can go. We might need to reshuffle something because otherwise I think the planning department have like 6 things we have to prep for that. But I think so it'll be either that meeting or the subsequent meeting. So it'll be soon.
Okay.
Okay, that's September 6th.
We want to get that service agreement so that, and the authorization to submit the grant. We don't quite know. And I did ask Riley to get to make sure, I want to make sure we don't miss any grant application deadlines. When, when do you need it by? But depending on which grant it is, she had said, is when the deadline is. So the earlier is better. That way, if they say, oh, this grant and it's due the next week, we can, or a couple weeks later, we won't miss the deadline because we don't have council authorization.
Further discussion on the motion on the floor? Not seeing any. The planning director call the roll.
Thank you. And I do want to note that Commissioner Burns did just need to leave the meeting for personal reasons, which she had notified me of, but we do still have a quorum. So Commissioner Kelly.
Yes, it's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Move it all on.
Vice Chair Fernandez.
Yes, 2 votes if I can. All my votes.
All right. Chair Ottinger.
Yeah, I'll give the other 2.
Thank you. So
much.
this passes unanimously. Thank you so much for your support in this.
Yeah, thank you, all of you. Carrie, you too. I know you've done a lot of work. Thank you for everyone involved.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. So, find my agenda. I think.
Yeah, so I was looking for it too. All right, we're up to subcommittee updates.
Thank you, Jessica, and Josh. Thank you so much for joining us, and Jeremy. Thank you.
Yeah. Hearts, sort of. So, do we have subcommittee updates? Everett and I talked on the phone because we really would like to look at the parks in town, the other ones beside Ives Park, and consider maintenance issues and other concerns. And while we did that with Ives Park with just the 2 of us or 3 of us with a subcommittee, Everett is thinking we really should do that with the whole planning commission and staff. Maybe now that COVID is over, that's possible. I know everyone's busy and I don't know how that fits into the timetable. It might be part of the work plan where we're also looking at the master maintenance. I can't remember exact words on that, Carrie. Is that something we should schedule with that item on the work plan?
I almost think, well, I guess the question is, because I think there was something on the work plan, and I can find that if we need, but I believe there was something on the work plan that talked about doing a actual site visit to at least one of the parks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that would actually be a field trip, and so that would be and the other committees do this every once in a while as well. They help us, like the public art committee. Their last meeting was at the sculpture garden site because they had business to do there. It's a city location, so there's no problem with that. We can post it as open to the public, and we just don't record the meeting because that's a little bit technically beyond us and usually not necessary.
And then we would have a schedule to visit the different areas, right? Is that the idea?
Yes, I guess, and it's maybe something I can work out, Kathy, with you as the chair, or you, both of you as the as the park subcommittee, call it, instead of Ives Park, and the chair and vice chair in an offline meeting, just to figure out when that would schedule out. Just because our meeting schedule is. It's nice to do that in the summer, and right now I'm looking at our schedule and it looks like it's packed through September right now.
That's what I think. Should not do it in isolation with something else that is related to that, so that so they work together better.
Right. So there's a couple of possibilities I could see though. So, but yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. And I'm not sure if you know, but Public Works does have a new assistant public works superintendent. So Eric Billings, who used to be the lead parks maintenance person, was promoted to that position, and that's because Nathan Sutton retired a month or so ago.
Okay.
And so now you have an assistant public works superintendent who's very familiar with the park side of thing, which is great. He was ever so helpful in getting the sculpture garden signage and all the last installations and all that kind of stuff installed. So I think I can probably coerce him to joining us for either him or Dante to joining us for one of those meetings. I think that's also helpful. At least it was when we did our walkthrough of eyes.
Yeah, he was there for that.
With the 4 of us, yeah, as the subcommittee. But I think if you're looking at another park, then yeah, to just talk about it in total. Or maybe it's 1 or 2 parks. I'm not sure, but
yeah,
logistically you can kind of figure that out.
Yeah, I'd either focus on the ones that need it the most, or pick 2 here and 2 there, and because they're close together and
sure,
as soon as last. Okay, so we're looking forward to that. Are there any other subcommittee updates? Not seeing anything. We'll move on to the planning director's report.
I'm just putting that on the forecast so I can make sure I talk to you about that soon. Thank you. Okay, so planning department report. I'm going to let John share the good news about the last city council meeting, if you'd like.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So last city council meeting, the Habitat for Humanity project was approved from your guys' recommendation last time you saw it. So it is, excuse me, moving on to the design review board next for its last review, and then we'll be moving into hopefully building permit phase probably early next year, I would assume. And then from there, hopefully that lot will no longer be vacant and have some really great homes and stuff like that on there. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Yes, and the council was very pleased to see it. And it was also the intro before we did our draft housing element presentation to them, which was well received. And we had quite a few commenters on it, and I think they all had really good things to say. I will note, just for anyone who's out there and interested, on YouTube land watching this, that the public comment period for that is open until August 22nd. At which time staff will be sitting down and reviewing those comments and making any adjustments to it before sending it off to the state for their review. A couple of things coming up on future council agendas. So council does not have a meeting next Tuesday. They take, as sort of their tradition, they take the second meeting in August off. But they will be having a special meeting August 31st, and that is to hear the Lowell Sheldon application, which was appealed by one of the members of the public. And then the September, this is September 6th meeting. We will have the approval of Planning Commission work plan. So the work plan that you all adopted a resolution recently. There is a request from the Public Art Committee to provide stipends to the Ives Park sculptors who provided the sculptures for this year. That is a rotating thing, but they wanted to provide a small amount to support artists in the community. And that would come out of this public art fund. Again, the Calder Creek naturalization concept. And we do have 2 grand jury reports from the Sonoma County Grand Jury, one on affordable housing monitoring and the other on affordable housing construction. And that is a time-sensitive item because we need to submit our responses by mid-September. So that will be on that meeting as well. We also have the receipt of the annual level of service report scheduled for that meeting. And that's the one that I think we may ask to. Even though John finished the report like a month or so ago, we may ask that be delayed just because it's, the council meetings. We want to make sure we're getting to those time critical items. And I don't know, I'm not at this point, I'm not sure for September 6th, if there are other items from other departments. Those are just the planning items. And then this week is Phoebe Golden's last week as a Civic Spark Fellow. So she has one last Climate Action Committee meeting tomorrow. But at the last city council meeting, we did get authorization to add a temporary professional staff to the city's salary schedule. And that means that, and what I have done is we have gone out and advertised for a part-time sustainability coordinator for flexible, but 2 to 4 months or so is what we anticipate to try to keep that those projects in the climate action framework moving on. And the other thing, we are working on the other fairly high profile project, the Woodmark Apartments on Bodega. That was never a planning commission project. That was, but they're going through their SB 35 streamlined approval process, and we are getting ready to issue the conditional approval for that this week, is what we're on to see, either this week or early next week. So that was most of my day today, so can't forget to update you on that. And I think that's it, unless there are questions from and I will say that sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I believe we have the facade improvement grant deadline coming up.
Yes,
and I think
15th of August.
Thank you. So if you know any businesses in town, it's not restricted to downtown, but certainly be defined downtown as a clear goal of the council. Please encourage them to submit. It's a very easy and a process that we've made, and it's a 75% match for businesses from the city up to $2,500. So
Is the anyone from the city or targeted, like, certain buildings that could use a little refresher and try to get a hold of anybody, or is it just kind of open to just put the word out?
Open to put the word out. It is not limited. We did get a budget approval of $20,000 for the year. We have a couple people who are requesting extensions because they were approved last year, but unable to complete the work in time. And so it is a use it or lose it for our budget stuff. So we need to renew those approvals. And I think we already have those applications. But the other, otherwise it's not limited at all. But if you know of someone who would use it, and I do know that Relaunch folks have been talking when they have had their meetings with downtown and whatnot, they've been talking about. We actually got quite a few applications.
Okay. Great.
This spring. But this is a new fiscal year, so we have a brand new $20,000 pot of money, and it's always easier for people to complete it within the, it needs to be completed by June of next year. It's always easier if they get the funding in earlier in the year to manage that.
That's great. It's amazing that this program is still going on. When I was economic development coordinator, I never would have imagined it still keep going. Just one other little thing is the Sebastopol Little League member had mentioned that I think October timeframe was when they had their changeover, and might be a time to do a report.
Funny, because I sent Andy an email literally last week or earlier this week about that, saying, hey, I know you just reported, but when you guys do the changeover, when is that? Let's schedule you guys to come together. That way that person has met the commission as well. Yeah,
and it's just going to be informational. Maybe we have a couple of questions, but it shouldn't be anything big deal. So good.
Yeah, and I think on that item, it probably makes sense to also put a discussion item separate from that, so they don't have to sit through that, but a discussion item of other organizations that it would be good to get a report to the Parks Commission. So like the pool or those.
Okay.
Or those dancers out at Wiseman. We want to know what you're doing, Kathy.
Well, I should come up with an annual.
We want you to demonstrate, actually.
Well, we're thinking of putting solar on Wishman Hall, so that's
yes,
tomorrow to talk about that. And there's so many questions when you don't really own the building, but you do own the improvement. So we're, a lot of little details to work out, and money to be raised And I suppose if we get a community development grant, we'll need to make sure that our contractor's estimate includes, the official wage rates for workers.
Yeah,
All those things have to be thought about, and
Yep.
I always thought I'd be able to hand this off to somebody, but we'll see. Maybe that will happen once we decide to move forward. We'll see about that. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. But I could, we just had an annual meeting in the spring, actually, and I thought, oh, I should just take that information and send it to the city, but maybe I'll do that next year. So we'll see.
Excellent. Or if you wanted to do it for me now, I'm happy to share that with the commission just as a informational item, not an agenda item.
Yeah, just to talk about what we're doing and where we are, especially since the
Sure.
pandemic and what our budget looks like. Yeah, I could work something up, but be better to do it after September 7th because we're starting a new class. So it's always busy then.
No problem. I thought you had something you could just send me from before. So, okay.
Just notes from the meeting, but
Got it. Okay.
okay. So if any other reports or questions, then we can move toward adjournment, and it's not quite 10. That's great. We got through it.
I knew this was going to be a long meeting. I had guessed 9:30. So
Yeah, almost. So this meeting is adjourned until August 23rd at 6 o'clock. Okay, thank you all for
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for your help, Carrie, on all of Okay, see you.
All right. See you. Yep. No problem. Sorry, Zach. I was trying to